Hey, warmer for the low! Welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN family of podcasts. We've got an excellent podcast for you as we're going to be joined in segment number 2 by one of our good friends, Ben Wilson, who does such great work here at VSiN. He's one of the best play-by-play voices that you're going to hear out there. Does some tennis, some college baseball, college basketball. He's currently calling the WAC tournament, so we're certainly going to be chatting about that. He, much like myself, a man that grew up in the great state of Wisconsin, so I have to take a little bit of a look at the Big Ten tournament and the Badgers prospects and any teams that he's seeing a little bit of value on that might be outside the Big Four. And obviously with the Big Four, that's Arizona, Duke, Florida, along with Michigan. If there's any teams outside of those teams that he feels like might be coming on a little bit strong as well. So we're going to be asking about that and so much more. And then in the final segment, I'm going to get you guys picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Wednesday as we hit some bank shots. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you do have one or two ways we fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at gunit_81. Keep in mind, letters EM, they mean does not matter. So as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. The other way is via an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it's very much appreciated. And then from there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. While I did not get in any Twitter/X questions today, boy, oh boy, did we have a fun day of college basketball on Wednesday. Let's take a look back at it, try to find some trends, and try to get to know these teams a little bit better.
Games from yesterday is Greg buzzing about. Here is the rowdy recap.
Both ranked teams in action were able to get the job done. One was able to get one of the most comfortable covers that you're ever going to see in your life. The other one in Louisville, it was a little bit more nip and tuck. They do not get the cover as a 7.5-point favorite, but they get the outright win against SMU. This by a count of 62-58, and for SMU, they go 9-27 from 3 compared to Louisville 6-26, but Louisville actually did a good job on defense, and SMU went 1 of 3 at the free throw line, so that was interesting to say the least. SMU loses the turnover battle by a count of 14-10, and for Louisville, they were without Mikal Brown in this game. You want to be noting that, but Ryan Conwell was able to give the team 16 points, so he uplifted them to victory, and for Louisville, they are on to the next round of the ACC tournament, and for SMU, they're one of the 500 million bubble teams that have lost over the last 48 hours, as Iowa State, they put to an end the Bobby Hurley era out there in Arizona State. Arizona State was down 45-16 at the half. They didn't get to 45 points in the game. 91-42 the final. Arizona State goes 1 of 19 from 3-point range. And what's interesting about this is that Arizona State was actually a really good against the spread team for you thus far this season. I think that a lot of people would be surprised to know that, but Arizona State closes up the season against the spread as like a top 30 team in terms of profitability. For Arizona State, they wrap things up at 20-12-1 against the spread, but yeah, on this day, they laid a big nasty turd. As for Iowa State, they were able to do a nice job of just being able to put nail to hammer in this game, as Milan Mimicelovic and company, they were able to get the job done, as Mimicelovic, he was able to supply the team with 21 points, goes 4 of 8 from 3. Now, Iowa State, they only go 15 of 25 at the free throw line. They really didn't need to hit those free throws as they won the turnover battle 23-8. So Arizona State, their season is done, and we have Memphis and their season being done as well. Talk about a disappointment, man. That was just rough to say the least, as Tulane gets a 81-69 win in this game, and for Tulane, 14 out of 34 from 3-point range, 5 of 22 for Memphis. Memphis loses the rebound battle 45-40, and for Tulane, Rowan Brumba, 35 points, 8 rebounds, pair of assists. He certainly went out there, got the job done. For St. Bonaventure, it's been a little bit of an adventurous year for them, and they have been one of your top over teams in all of college basketball, and they played another very easy over 99-80. They absolutely handed to LaSalle for this Bonaventure team in terms of their over rate, 20 overs to 11 unders. That is a top 20 mark in all of college basketball, and for Bonaventure, they had Deshaun Bowen be able to step up in this game, 16 points, 7 boards, 9 assists, and they went 13 out of 24 from 3-point. They win the rebound battle 41-30, so they get the job done out there in the Atlantic 10 tournament. For Maryland, their run is over. They lose to Iowa 75-64 in the Big Ten tournament. This was an interesting spread game, as this was one that closed more in that neighborhood about 11.5. So if you got the 11.5, you were able to get there. And Iowa has actually been a really good over team thus far this season. I don't think that a lot of people would think that with how slow the team plays. But for Iowa, now up to 18 overs and 14 unders thus far this season. And they were able to get another nice performance in this game out of Bennett Sturts, who's been doing it for them all season long. He was able to throw in their 6 boards. Wasn't actually the top scorer. That would be Cooper Cock, who gave the team 19 points, but still, for Sturts, 17 points, throws in their 8 assists. For Iowa, they win the turnover battle 16-11, so Maryland, they wrap up a very disappointing season, to say the least. Now, I will have to probably bypass some of the late West Coast games because I do have to have this up by midnight Pacific, 3 o'clock a.m. Eastern. So, doing this as I do not know who won that Idaho versus Montana game to be able to go to the NCAA tournament, but this team was able to clinch a bid to the NCAA tournament. The Mountain Hawks of Lehigh, they were able to do their part. They take down Boston U 74-60. Final in this one, Hank Alvey was able to do a nice job supplying the team with 14 points. Lehigh, 9 of 19 from 3, and Boston U, their calling card all season long was 3-point shooting. 1 of 16 from 3-point range in this game. They also lost the rebound battle, 36-31, as Ben Defty, he was able to give Boston U 21 points, but not enough when the team was at ice cold from 3-point range. And speaking of ice cold teams from 3-point range, Cincinnati had everything handed to them to be able to win this game, and they just decided not to do so against Central Florida. 66-65. Central Florida able to get the job done in overtime despite going 3 of 21 from 3-point range. Another under for Cincinnati, by the way. 12 overs to 21 unders thus far this season. We'll see if they play in the Crown, the NIT, or the NCAA tournament. And Central Florida as well went 13 out of 23 at the free throw line. Just absolutely ridiculous how Cincinnati lost this game. They lost the turnover battle 19-10. JaMychal Stillwell went into takeover mode, 17 points, 15 rebounds. Central Florida, they find a way to be able to get the job done there. NC State gets the job done, 98-88. They hand it to Pittsburgh, as Pittsburgh was about an 8.5-point underdog in this game. And the Pittsburgh offense came to play, 12-27 from 3-point range. They shoot 57% from the floor, but NC State has been one of the most efficient offenses in the country away from home. They went 13 out of 23 from 3-point range. Kadir Copeland, 24 points, 8 assists for the team. He had 5 out of the team's 6 turnovers. They won the turnover battle 11-6. So NC State, they do find a way to persevere, get the job done. And NC State has been another interesting team with their totals 20 overs to 12 under. So they've been one of your best over teams in all of college basketball. And then in terms of the ACC tournament, doing this as the Clemson versus Wake Forest game is happening. Currently, Wake Forest is down by a count of 52-38, so I'm going to assume that they are not going to be advancing in the Big 12 tournament. You did have Kentucky get a non-cover against LSU, 87-82. That was an over in which Brandon Garrison was able to give the team at 17 points. So you had Kentucky be able to get the win, but no cover in that game. And Loyola Chicago has been one of the most miserable against the spread teams in all of college basketball, but what was a really bad second half for Richmond wraps up in really, really bad fashion. And I'm talking second half, both in this game and just overall for the season. For Richmond, they lose 75-67, had full control of this game. They were up 11 points with about 11 minutes remaining, and then they toilet bowled as Loyola Chicago outscores Richmond 75-67 in the second half. Loyola Chicago just 12-20 against the spread this season, but Richmond went 9 of 32 from 3-point range, and for Loyola Chicago, Joseph Joseph off the bench, 26 points, 4 of 5 from 3-point range. So Loyola Chicago, they do survive. They advance out there in the Atlantic tournament. Also being able to survive and advance, Washington 83-79. They do not get the cover, but they do get the outright win against USC, a USC team that against the spread, they wrap up the season 13-18. We'll see if they get a bid to a tournament or not, but man, that was a rough end to the season for them, as Cam Woods, he did his best, 24 points, 6 rebounds, 7 assists, but for this USC team, they do lose the turnover battle 13-11. They also go 10 of 18 at the free throw line, 14 out of 19 for Washington. Hans Steinbeck, double-double, 10 points, 11 rebounds. You had Zoom Diallo throwing there 11 assists, 22 points, so he had a double-double of his own. So Washington, they do find a way in that game to be able to get the job done. Also being able to get the job done, UNLV, this was dependent upon your closing number, 73-70 was the final in this game, as UNLV in a lot of places close in that neighborhood, about a 2.5 to a 3-point favorite, and they were up 44-31 at the half, and they sort of had a little bit of a rough go of it in the second half, 19 of 31 at the free throw line, but Kamani Hamilton, he was able to supply the team with 23 points, so UNLV, they're on to the next round of the Mountain West tournament. Also on to the next round of the Mountain West tournament, this one actually just going final as I'm doing this podcast. Yeah, Colorado State get the win, but no cover against Fresno State, 67-63 the final, and Fresno State, ladies and gentlemen, has been one of your best cover teams in all of college basketball. Hopefully we see them in a postseason tournament. 21-10 against the spread for Fresno State, and for Fresno State, they held in this game because they did a pretty solid job on defense. Offense left something to be desired, 7-23 from 3, but they held Colorado State, who's been a good 3-point shooting team, to go 10 of 30 from 3-point range. Fresno State does lose the turnover battle 13-9, but They do a nice job holding in this game by going 8 of 8 at the free throw line, so they were able to hold in this game. Prairie View has actually been a really good cover team as well. 19-9 against the spread. They do win this game against Bethune-Cookman 71-67 as an underdog outright on the money line, as they went 8 of 14 from 3-point. They only went 11 of 20 at the free throw line, but hey, you had Dante Horn just go around the horn for 30 big points in this game, so Prairie View, they continue to be able to make you some money. McNeese is on to the NCAA tournament. They played a triple overtime game less than 17 hours before the tip of this game against Stone Cold Stephen F. Austin, who's been an incredible against the spread team as well. 22-9 against the spread. That's the second best mark in all of college basketball, but on this day, McNeese wins 76 of 59. Javon Garcia had 21 points, while Stephen F. Austin had 20 with like 3 minutes remaining in the first half. He went 11 of 18 from the floor, and for Stephen F. Austin, a defense that has been so strong all season long. They lose battle on the glass 37-24, and they went just 37% from the floor, 5 of 21 from 3-point. They win 28 games, and they're most likely not going to the NCAA tournament, so you absolutely hate to see that, but what you do love to see is the fact that Providence was able to get the job done for yet another over, 91-81. They come back against Butler as they were down 16 points in this game, and Providence has just been a flamethrower to the over thus far this season. How about 22 overs to 10 unders thus far this season? Ryan Mella was your top guy with 23 points, 9 rebounds, and for the Friars, they go 14 out of 27 from 3-point. Meanwhile, Butler, they go just 5 of 17 from 3-point. Finley Bizjack, he's trying to Bizjack the opponent with 17 points, but for Providence, just a little bit too Mella in this game, so they were able to find a way, and Xavier has actually been your top over team in all of college basketball. They played yet another over against Marquette, 89-87. They do get the job done at Xavier. Now 24 overs to 8 unders thus far this season. Not like they necessarily did with their 3-point shooting either. They went 8 of 23 from 3-point. Marquette, 11 of 40 from 3-point. Adrian Stevens, he took 10 3-point shots, and he had 6 points to show for it. So that was not great, to say the least, for Marquette. They actually win the turnover battle 11-9. They go 14 of 19 at the free throw line, but Xavier 15 out of 17 at the free throw line. Jovan Misevich was able to throw in their 21 points, and for Marquette, they wrap up what was a very, very disappointing year against the spread. 12-19-1 against the spread, so that was a little bit less than savory. Not that Xavier has been necessarily a cash cow for you at 16-16 against the spread, but boy, not great for Marquette, to say the least, so they are unable to survive and advance in that one. You did see as well Florida State be able to get the job done against Cal, 95-89 the final. They've been an up-down all-around team along with BYU. They take down West Virginia 68-48 the final. AJ Devonsa, 27 points, 7 rebounds, 3 assists, and for West Virginia, just have not been the same team when they've been away from home. They shoot 38% from the floor, 5 of 18 from 3-point, and they lost the turnover battle 22-13. Just an almighty sloppy Joe sort of game in that one. And then you did see as well the sad and pathetic season of Air Force come to an end. 80-45, Nevada gets the job done. Air Force was down 39-10 at the half. My gosh, for this Air Force team, they wrap up the season 10-21-1 against the spread. Fortunately, not dead last in all of college basketball. That actually belongs to Kansas City. 5-23 against the spread for them, but man, this was just not great for Air Force. They don't deserve any more talk about on this podcast. Another team that has been really bad against the spread, Mississippi State, as they too were 10-22 against the spread this season. They lose to Auburn by kind of 79-61 for Auburn. I mean, it's not like they were amazing. 11 of 30 from 3, 14 of 22 at the free throw line. They do win the rebound battle, though. Auburn does 43-39. And Mississippi State, 6 of 23 from 3. Josh Hubbard supplied the team with 22 points. Took him 25 shots to be able to get there. Kevin Overton, he was able to supply 22 points. So Auburn, one of the few teams on the bubble that got a win. It was against Mississippi State, though. And well, it's not been great for Mississippi State, to say the least, so yay verily there. And then yay verily to Georgetown. As I am doing this, they've got like 40 seconds left in their game against DePaul. They're currently up 8 points, and this was a rather pick-em line, and DePaul has been a really good against the spread team this year. 18-11-2 against the spread, but barring something insane, and you will not be hearing this in case of something insane happens, because I will utilize an edit, they are not going to get the job done in Georgetown. They entered in this game just 11-19 against the spread. They've been getting a lot more out of Vincent Iwuchukwu in this game. Iwuchukwu has come off the bench, giving you a double-double, so he's getting it done once again for Georgetown, and they're going to survive. They're going to be able to advance in the Big East tournament, and DePaul, they're going to play another under in this game, as right now we've got like 106 points on the board with about 30 seconds remaining, so unless something very insane happens, we're going to get another under in a DePaul game, as DePaul, they are now going to be going to 11 overs to 21 unders thus far this season, so they've been a wild and crazy team out there as well. And then you saw a wild and crazy game between Abilene Christian and Tarleton, a game that our good friend Ben Wilson was on the call for, and we'll talk with him in a few minutes. 84-78, Abilene Christian, they do find a way to persevere, get the job done. As for Tarleton State, they went 25 of 35 at the free throw line. Abilene Christian, 33 of 45 at the free throw line. A combined 60 fouls in this game. 60! Yeah, so hopefully you took the over. I fortunately did, so that was great. You'll love to see the fouls called when you have the over, when you have the under. A little bit less than savory out there, so that's obviously very fascinating to say the least. And Sam Houston State, they get the job done against New Mexico State. Currently, there's about 10 seconds left. 68-59 is the score in this game, and Sam Houston State has just continued to be able to cash you just ticket after ticket for Sam Houston State. This cover is going to bring them down to 20-9 against the spread this season, so they just continue to be able to cash you tickets. Like I said, there are a few results from the late Wednesday action that I'm not able to get up because this has to be uploaded by midnight Pacific, 3 o'clock a.m. Eastern, but those teams that advance, you're going to be hearing those game breakdowns, so we've got you guys all covered there. And if you're taking a look at trend-wise at what we're getting in college basketball right now, again, this is with a few games pending for the late Wednesday action, but that said, we have been seeing a lot of underdogs being able to cash. Currently, 150 and 121 against the spread are underdogs in the last 7 days. That's 55.4%, and the overs are coming through. We've had a lot of overtime games, which has helped out with this. We've had 21 games go to overtime, but 144 overs to 127 unders. That's a 53.1% hit rate to the over. I believe we've had 3 pushes along the way as well, and overall for the season, unders are still hitting at about 50.6%, 2,795 unders to 2,729 overs. Meanwhile, underdogs overall hitting at 51.4% for the season, 2,840 to 2,683. So that's where we're seeing college basketball right now, and that's where we're all getting trend-wise. Coming up next, how about if we do chat it up with our good friend Ben Wilson here at VSiN right here on Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Peterson, now a part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Side edge this college basketball season? Well, VSiN experts use CBB Analytics, the most comprehensive college basketball analytics platform in the world. See injury impact, on and off data, clutch time performance metrics, first versus second half splits, and so much more. Utilize the promo code of VSiN, that is VSIN, to get $30 off and find your betting edge over at cbbanalytics.com. That is cbbanalytics, all one word.com. For anyone that is new to VSiN, well, I wish you a friendly hello. This is an attention to anyone that is new to VSiN because you're able to get some free stuff with our daily newsletter. It's a great way to catch up on everything that's happening in the sports betting world. It's delivered straight to your inbox every single morning. VSiN's newsletter offers picks, data, strategies for the day's betting menu, and so much more. Sign up for free today over at VSiN.com/newsletter. That's VSIN.com/newsletter, and start receiving your free newsletter tomorrow morning. That is VSIN.com/newsletter. Stay ahead of the game and bet smarter with VSiN. And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Always great to be joined by this man, as we've got Ben Wilson aboard. He does such great work here at the networks with so many of our live betting shows, taking a look at tennis, and he's one of the best play-by-play men that you're going to hear because he's doing the WAC tournament right now, which we're certainly going to be diving in on that. He does some indoor football, he does some college baseball, he does a little bit of everything. He checks all the boxes, and you're able to follow him on the old Twitter /checks at his first name, Ben, last name Wilson, with an underscore between Ben and Wilson, and then an underscore, and then the number 1 all together. And Ben, always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you.
Hey, absolutely, Greg. As we're speaking, I'm walking into the Great Orleans Arena, one of our favorite March Madness venue sites, and what a great week to be a part of this sport. Can't wait to see how it plays out.
Yep, and we will start first things first with the tournament that you are doing. That will be the WAC, and it's a very unique tournament because when you have 7 teams, and we didn't know if we were going to get 7 teams, we didn't know if we were going to actually have Utah Valley partaking or not. Fortunately, we do, but how do you take a look at this sort of a bracket? Because we're doing this out of that Tarleton State versus Abilene Christian game. Winner of that is going to be playing on Thursday, and always very unique when you've got an odd number of teams in a bracket.
No doubt, and look, if you're completely handicapping this solely from a karmic culture standpoint here. I mean, look, Utah Valley, I've done this tournament 6 years if you include this season, Greg, and I mean, Utah Valley has had the most rotten luck. They blew a 23-point lead one year to Southern Utah in the semis.
I remember that.
They've had buzzer beater heartbreak. They've really had every possible which way you could potentially draw up to lose a game, and yet they come in this year by the metrics. They're pretty clearly the most balanced overall team. They have a really good defense. I'm a big fan of Todd Phillips and what he does, how he took over so seamlessly from Mark Madsen. They should be the rightful favorite. And yet on top of that, kind of like you alluded to, I mean, I'm sitting there getting ready to come back to Vegas, and we had no idea if they would even be in the tournament because of this ongoing lawsuit with the conference. So it has been, I mean, you can't even dream of a weirder scenario or ever picture something like this happening. And yet, I mean, they're here. It is no secret how bitter this divorce is as they're heading to the Big West. And if we're being honest, I think, the legality shows they clearly needed to pay the exit fee. They didn't. And, the WAC took it obviously pretty far, but by most people's thoughts. And here we are today. If there was ever a year for the Utah Valley Wolverines to finally get all those, ghosts of Orleans Arena passed out of their system and raise a nice little salute to the WAC on their way out, this would certainly be it. And I think that's probably the appropriate way this is priced. I would also add, though, I mean, you look at the last month and a half, California Baptist has been playing the best basketball of anybody. They do have the best player in this tournament. And to me, as much as it's always tempting to go away from the chalk in kind of a one bid league like this, it's a little bit wonky. I got to think we see UVU and CBU at the end of the day, Greg.
Yep, and it is going to be really interesting to take a look at the matchups as well, because these teams all played each other 3 times during the regular season, and you know this as well as I do from covering the conference. You've got some of the biggest diversity of styles in the country, as you've got 2 teams that squared off on Wednesday, and Tarleton State and Abilene Christian, who are both in the top 3 in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. You mentioned Cal Baptist. They are one of the best rebounding teams that you're going to find in all of college basketball. Utah Valley does a great job in terms of generating turnovers. They're great on glass, but they themselves have their own turnover issues. You've got a Utah Tech team that has been able to do a great job in terms of guarding the arc. I really don't know what Southern Utah does well. I'm sorry. UT Arlington, though, they're one of the best three-point shooting defenses in all of college basketball. And really, other than Southern Utah, again, Southern Utah, feels like everyone has a very distinct strength on the defensive side of things.
Yeah, wow, how dare you. Rob Jeter, great coach in our beloved home state, who when we were kids was just a great coach at UW-Milwaukee in the post-Bruce Pearl days. I will say Southern Utah they kind of play into that stylistic mismatch because they are by far the fastest tempo team in this league. It's kind of where they've had success. They've been able to speed up some of the super rugged, slow, rough and tumble physical teams in the WAC this year and have had success because of it. I would say, though, going from one style to another, there's going to be some kind of interesting, quick turnarounds to factor in here. And I guess the one matchup that comes to mind, whoever, and we're recording this before I'm calling the Abilene Christian Tarleton game tonight, which I fully expect to just be a war. I mean, these are 2 teams who have, they're really struggling coming in, but they foul a ton. It's going to be ugly. There's going to be a ton of turnovers. I don't know who gets out of that, but it would not stun me at all if the winner of this game tonight, who is going to be, of all the games Thursday, they'll be the only team who has already played in a game against Utah Tech, a team who was a great story, who weren't expected to do anything this year. John Judkins was just named Coach of the Year, and I think rightly so, given the preseason expectations. But you kind of dig a little bit deeper on Utah Tech, and even Coach Judkins, when we talked to him the other day, admitted it. He said, look, we've been really poor rebounding the ball. We've not gotten better in the way that we hoped on that, that part of the ball and on that side of the glass. But we've just kind of been fortunate because we've shot the ball really well all year. And that, just thinking about it from a macro standpoint, you get a super physical team, whoever wins between ACU and Tarleton, and you get a Utah Tech team that's kind of had to rely on just pure shot making in a neutral site when they kind of overachieved based on regular season expectations. That's the one matchup where it would not stun me. I'm not sure how they would price that depending on who the matchup is, but that would kind of be the one I'd circle for Thursday as one. I'd be kind of surprised, honestly, if Utah Tech, nothing would surprise me, for being honest, but if Utah Tech was able to win that comfortably going away, that would really surprise me in that late quarter on Thursday.
Yep, absolutely. And I do think that we are going to get ourselves a ton of great matchups out there. And I think all 7 of these teams will have a better half of basketball in the first half than Air Force did on Wednesday. And we can say that much, as we do have Ben Wilson, who does such great work here at VSiN, joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. And no doubt about it, the WAC is going to be a lot of fun. And just how do you take a look in general at these conference tournaments? Because we've got a wide range of them. The one that you're covering right now in the WAC, we all know you need to be able to win that conference tournament in order to go to the NCAA tournament. Perhaps a team like a Utah Valley might go to the NIT, CBI, but there's no hope of an NCAA tournament bid. Meanwhile, we've got a lot of the power conferences, and we both have a lot of affinity for the Big Ten, with most of us being from the great state of Wisconsin. We'll dive in on that a little bit more in a second, but you've got a lot of teams that are fighting for NCAA tournament berths. How do you just change your handicap a little bit from a bigger conference tournament where you've got a lot of bubble teams to a conference tournament like the WAC where it's a one-bid league, and you mentioned it, these teams, they all have very distinct styles?
Yeah, I think the big thing that I try to look at, the motivation piece has changed so much. And so I think you really have to go case by case basis. I don't know that it's as simple anymore. It's just, well, this is a one bid league and this is going to be a 3 or 4 bid league, and you change your handicap accordingly. You hear from coaches all the time once you cover these teams and you talk to people around these programs. There's a lot of teams that come into these conference tournaments in today's day and age that I think are even different from 4 or 5 years ago in the era of NIL and the portal. They come in and it's kind of like happy action fun time, guys. Like, our season's over. We're probably not we're not getting in. We're 500 if you're in a bigger conference. Let's just try to put on a show out here for the transfer portal, see if we can get some money in the off season. And is that a great, team building 101 strategy? Absolutely not. But we have seen countless times how that can have a major impact. And you can have some of these teams who come in loose, absolutely nothing to lose. All they're playing for is, again, just kind of get some more tape one more time before they go into the portal and leave. I actually think for teams in that situation, I'm more of a position to bet on them, at least early in games too, because you sometimes see them come out and it's just like chucking threes left and right. And all of a sudden you look up we've already seen it too. I mean, I realize Maryland and Oregon, it's not like either of those teams are going anywhere, but Maryland was the ultimate example of this. I mean, how many guys are going to be on that roster next year? And they come out first round of the Big Ten and they're just draining bombs left and right. And all of a sudden they're up double digits. So I think more of those examples are the ones I try to look at. It gets a little harder the deeper you get into conference play, but I still think the same principle sort of applies. And it's why you generally see the teams that you least expect make the deepest runs in these conference tournament weeks.
Yep, I am right there with you. And I do think that it's really interesting to take a look at those sorts of teams because everyone assumes, this team is below 500. They're not going to the NCAA tournament. They're just going to roll over and die. And typically we have not seen that. Look at Pittsburgh and what they were able to do in terms of wrecking Stanford's chances for the NCAA tournament. And we're going to have an interesting display of this on Thursday with our beloved Wisconsin Badgers taking on Washington. And right now, Washington on the opener, I've seen them as a 6.5-point underdog. That total is about 156. How do you take a look at both this game and both of these teams moving forward? Because Washington, I think that is very clear. They need to be able to win this game to go to the NCAA tournament, though NIT, the crown, probably in their future. Meanwhile, for Wisconsin, they have been one of the most volatile teams in all of college basketball, and one that I think that you can make the case for to have an early exit, but one that you could also make the case could be one of the few teams outside like the top 2 lines that could be able to make a serious run.
Yeah, I was going to say, would anything really surprise you be off the table as far as...
You could put every result in a hat for Wisconsin, anything from going to the title game to losing in the first round, pull it out, and it's like, sounds right.
I'm completely with you. And here's the thing. Washington just has not been consistent enough on, the 3-point shooting's been horrible all year. And, defensively, there have been some moments, mostly when they've been at home, but it's not like they do anything special on the defensive end. And that's kind of how I handicap, Wisconsin. It's more evaluating their opponent because, we saw this last week when they go to Mackey Arena, they take on a Purdue team that has really been sliding on the defensive end. And I thought that, the game played kind of right into Wisconsin's hands. It was just a free-flowing, wide-open shooting fest. And when the Badgers get good looks and they get some confidence and rhythm, they're a really hard offense to slow down. And that's why they've got deep NCAA tournament kind of talent on the roster. At the same time, you match them up against a team that's super disciplined on defense. It's also able to force turnovers, but also create tough shots. And I just think it's a Wisconsin team that you're sort of rolling the dice, right? Like they might hit 15 threes, they might be okay, or they might go, 5 of 22. And we've seen both of those outcomes this year. As it pertains to Washington specifically, I just don't know. Sure, they're in a must-win spot. I don't know how much of that sort of upside defensively they really have. And I totally expect Wisconsin to come out, look really impressive. Maybe it is a true nail in the coffin, death knell to Washington season. And then Wisconsin turns right around and makes like 3 triples in their next game and loses by 20. That's kind of how I expect it to go. It's kind of how I expect the NCAA tournament to go. I expect them to win a round and probably be in sort of a toss-up random game in round 2. That's just sort of the way the Badgers have gone all year. We've certainly been following it since November, and I don't see any reason to think it would go any differently now that we're into March.
Yep, I do agree with you there. And I do think that it's going to be really interesting to look at these two teams and how they're going to be able to fare moving forward. And just, are there a few teams that you are looking at that you just feel like they're showing a little bit of upside right now? Whether that be a mid-major team, we just talked about Wisconsin, we talked about how low the floor is and how high the ceiling is, but outside of perhaps those top teams like Duke, Michigan, Arizona, and Florida, I think have separated themselves from the rest. Is there one or two that you've been taking a look at right now? You feel good about them and you feel like there might be a little bit of value on them?
I would say, even though they lost and didn't cover to Gonzaga in the WCC title game, I would say what Santa Clara showed me this week.
And if they're not in the NCAA tournament, then what are we doing?
Yeah, no, they have to be in. I mean, you and I have been talking about Santa Clara since I think our first or second show we did together back in like the second week in November. I mean, that team is legit. They've only gotten better. I think metrically they were way ahead of public perception even then. And I think the metrics have only gotten better. And I don't know that, just given the market, given the conference, I don't know that the public perception has really caught up to the reality of how good that team is. And with Herb Sendek, back in the dance and how rock solid of a program that is, how consistent they are defensively, multiple scores at different levels on the floor. That is a team that, look, I thought they handled themselves so well. The way they really beat St. Mary's definitively, comprehensively in the WCC semis, a game they definitely had to win. And look, we're certainly right there with Gonzaga, even though, again, they kind of folded a little bit there down the stretch. I have every reason to believe that Santa Clara is going to be one of those teams that a lot of people sleep on, look at them and say, well, they didn't win their conference, or they really, WCC outside of Gonzaga has kind of gotten blasted in the tournament here in recent years. I would go the other way, and that's a team I am really high on heading into next week and seeing where they end up on Selection Sunday.
Yep, I'm right there with you. Unlike so many of these teams on the bubble, looking at you, Cincinnati, looking at you, Stanford, looking at you, pretty much every team out there in the ACC on the bubble that have lost game after game after game. It was refreshing to see Santa Clara actually win a game against St. Mary's that they needed to. So hopefully we get them in. And Ben, I know you're doing such amazing work looking at college basketball. You're going to do an incredible job with the WAC tournament that we're going to be hearing all throughout the week. And then from there, I know you're doing a lot of college baseball and so much more. So love to get people at home know what's all on tap for you and how people can follow along on social media and other platforms.
Hey, appreciate it as always. I'm at Ben_Wilson_1. And yeah, WAC tournament all week here for ESPN Plus, all the men's games up through the semis. So super excited for what's to come here over the next couple days.
It is going to be a lot of fun. Ben, he does such an amazing job with his play-by-play work of his work here at VSiN. He checks all the boxes. So a big thanks to Ben for joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN family podcast. And coming up next, it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game of the betting board for this college basketball Thursday as we hit some big shots. Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Always great to be joined by Ben Wilson, who does such great work here at the network. He is an incredible play-by-play voice. He does a little bit of everything every single time he joins me. Such amazing insights, and he did so once again today. So big thanks to Ben for joining me in the last segment. Now it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Thursday as we hit some bank shots.
Most financial establishments close at a certain time, but not here. It is time for a side and total on every game on today's betting board bank shots.
Do note that, as per usual, any changes that are made to these plays will be listed up on my Twitter/X feed at @GUnit_D1. We're going to be going in Las Vegas rotation order. This is essentially tip time with these conference tournaments. So it starts with the MAC, and then the Atlantic 10, the ACC, the Big East, then the Big 10, the SEC, the Big 12, the Mountain West, Conference USA, American, WAC, Big West, and then at the bottom, you've got the extra games of the SWAC and the MEAC. And if you didn't follow all that, well, I list the order of games wherever you're listening to this podcast, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, in the description. So let's start things off. 7:05, 7:06, UMass is going to be facing off against Miami of Ohio from Cleveland, Ohio. Right now, that total is 163.5 to 164.5. Miami of Ohio is a 7.5 point favorite. Saw a few stray hits out there as well, and anything above a 6, I'm willing to take with UMass. I did set them as a 5.5 point underdog. I actually think that this is a bit of a bad matchup for Miami of Ohio because UMass has done a pretty solid job in terms of guarding the 3-point line in games played away from home. In a road/neutral venue, it's a UMass team that has been a top 40 team with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, and with this UMass team, they do a great job on the glass as well. well. Miami of Ohio, the one thing that they don't do is generate second and third chances. They rebound just 23% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound. UMass 106th with regards to offensive rebound percentage, and top 100 team in terms of their defensive rebound percentage. Now, where UMass is at a disadvantage is that they do not take very good care of the ball. This team is outside the top 290 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis, but Leonardo Batil has been able to give you 18 points per game. Marcus Banks has been that 38% three-point shooter for the team, 17 points per game, and then Kajal Parker has been able to throw in their 42% three-point shooting. You have down low about 7 boards, 11.5 points out of Daniel Hank and Sanford, so a lot of guys are contributing to the cause. Now for UMass, they can be gashed down low. They are outside the top 275 with regards to opponents' two-point shooting percentage, and for Miami of Ohio, well, their forte for a lot of people is their three-point shooting. They're a top 15 team in the country, shooting over 39% from three-point. They've also been a top 10 team with their two-point shooting percentage. They were dealing with a little bit of an injury to Luke Skuljak, but he should be all good to go here. 10.5 points, 4.5 assists per game. Peter Suter continues to shoot 42% from three with about 15 points per game, and you just look up and down the boulevard for this team. Out of their top 5 scorers, all but one of them shoot at least 37.6% from three-point, and that would be the main facilitator in Skuljak. And Miami of Ohio doesn't have an advantage with regards to the turnover front. They've been a top 100 team with regards to turnovers generated on a per possession basis. They're trying to force teams to the inside as well. They're a top 100 team in terms of percentage of field goal attempts by opponents that do come from two-point range, but I do think that with Miami of Ohio being a little bit lackadaisical here on defense, that UMass is going to hold in there. I think that the turnovers might just cost you the over here. I did set my total 163.5. This, keep in mind, is going to be a game that tips before noon Eastern, so 164 plus like the under, and I'm going to take 6 plus here with UMass. 707, 708, Bowling Green is going to be playing against Toledo. Toledo's a 1-1.5 point favorite. 152.5 is the total, and made a total of 153. I like the over. Do have a Toledo team that has shot it well from three-point, or a top 40 team with a three-point shooting percentage, but it's a Toledo team that runs into a Bowling Green defense that has been absolutely superb away from home. Top 25 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but the reason why I think you get an over is that Toledo's been less than savory with their defense. 264th in the country in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. Now, they have been okay in terms of generating turnovers. They're 97th in the country in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. Meanwhile, Bowling Green, they're more around about 79th, and you just take a look at this Bowling Green team, and you've got Javante Campbell, who's been a really nice do-it-all guy for this team. He generates nearly 3 steals per contest. He's your top scorer, throwing in their 18.5 points, 4.5 boards. Bowling Green has also been a top 40 team in terms of defensive rebound percentage, so they don't allow second and third chances. In games played away from home, teams are shooting less than 32.5% from three-point range against them. And then you take a look at the Toledo defense, and right now it's 277th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They'll probably have a tough time with Sam Towns down low, who's been able to give you about 7.5 boards, 12 points per game, and Toledo's outside the top 3 with regards to defensive rebound percentage, so that means second and third chances abound for a Bowling Green team that has been a top 125 team in terms of points per possession. For Toledo, you've got 2 main scorers in Sonny Wilson along with Leroy Blyden Jr. that both shoot 39.8% from 3. Between the two of them, about 33.5 points per game, and both give you 4.5 assists per game. Toledo, to their credit, they're a top 55 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. If they can find a way to the free throw line, they shoot 76.8% while they're there. That's the top 45 mark in the country, but also well outside the top 3 in terms of 2-point shooting percentage on defense. Austin Parks has been able to give you about 5.5 boards, 10.5 points per game, and then Sean Craig throws in their 7 boards per game, but the way that they are getting absolutely land-based down low, I think that Bowling Green, along with them being able to guard the arc, with them being able to do a nice job in terms of generating turnovers, that allows Bowling Green to be able to get the job done, and probably Bowling Green should have been the 3-point favorite, so I like Bowling Green on the money line, and at a 152.5 or less, I do like the over. 7-9, 7-10, you've got Buffalo, and they're going to be playing against Akron. Akron is a 13.5 point favorite. Totals between 159.5 to 160.5. Made my line 13, so 13.5 is my buy point here on Buffalo. When Buffalo went on the road, they lost to them 99 to 85 a few weeks ago, so I do think that you're going to get a game that approaches double figures, but this is an Akron team that they do have a few warts on defense. They're about 91st in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Buffalo's 300th. Buffalo has been getting land-based there, but it is a Buffalo team that is a top 35 team in terms of points per possession away from home. As a collective, away from home, they're shooting over 37% from 3. Recognize that they're dealing with an injury to their top scorer, Daniel Freitag, who's been able to give you 20 points per game, but he was missing in that previous game against Akron, and they were still able to do a solid job with Ryan Sable shooting 40% from 3, 18.5 points per game. Angelo Breezy, 14.5 points. He shoots 38% from the outside. Noah Batchelor has been able to shoot 45% from 3. Like, you've got legitimately good 3-point shooters. It's a Buffalo team that has been a top 150 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. Not doing a great job on the glass or outside the top 200 with that regard, and boy, are they giving it up from 3. teams are shooting 35% from 3 against them. They're outside the top 300 with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, and Akron is 3rd in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Tafari Johnson headlines things with about 20.5 points, shoots 37.5% for 3. Armani Lyles, Shama Scott, they both shoot over 41% for 3 between the two of them, about 27 points per game. The Mahaffey brothers combined for about 18.5 points per game, so weapons upon weapons. But with Akron, this is a team that they're also allowing teams to shoot darn near 35% from 3-point range as well, so that means that there's going to be open looks from Buffalo. And Akron, very up-tempo team, top 65 team in terms of total possessions per game. Buffalo's a little bit more of a mid-tempo team. They're about 232nd in terms of total possessions per game, but I think that you get a lot of offensive efficiency in Buffalo. It's just enough shots hold in there, so made a line of 13. We'll take 13.5 here with Buffalo, and I do like this over. 7-11, 7-12, also for the MAC tournament. Ohio and Kent State do battle. Kent State right now a 3.5 point favorite. Total's 159.5, and for Ohio, I set them as a 2.5 point underdog. I don't want the money line, but I'm going to be willing to take the points. Kent State is playing at warp speed. They are 12th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. They also rebound 34% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound away from home. That is a top 25 mark in the country. Now Ohio is just absolutely putrid with both their 3-point shooting offense and their defense. For Ohio, they are allowing teams to shoot over 35.5% from 3-point range. They're a bottom 30 team in all of college basketball in that regard. They're also 338th with their own 3-point shooting percentage at 30.3%. But you also have a Kent State team that has been about 213th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Now Ohio is clocking in right around about 279th, but it's an Ohio team that's finding their bearings on offense. They are now a top 185 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis because they've been able to do a nice job in terms of driving the ball inside. In terms of their 2-point shooting percentage, Ohio is a top 80 team in the country, and in games played away from them, that does ascend in the top 65. Meanwhile, you do have a Kent State team that has some pretty demonstrative home and road splits. For Kent State, they have been a tremendous team in terms of 3-point shooting at home at 39.5%. That does fall to 31.2% when they are away from home, and for Kent State, they have actually been a little bit better defensively when they've been away from home, but Delreco Gillespie certainly is going to be able to run things down low. 18 plus points, 11.5 rebounds per game. He is the best rebounder in this game, and he's probably the best rebounder in the entire stinking conference. Sion Medley has done a nice job supplying for the team, about 11.5 points, 6.5 assists per game. Here's a kryptonite that you do have for Kent State, though. They turn the ball over 13.5 times per game. They're outside the top 290. There's a turnovers on a per possession basis on offense, and while Ohio might not be an amazing turnover team, they are a top 175 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. Kent State, they have taken quite a bit of a fall off with that regard. Now, Kent State, they're a top 10 team in terms of free throw attempts per game, and they do shoot 74% at the free throw line, with Morgan Safford being one of your main scorers with about 14 points per game. Meanwhile, Jackson Pavletsky, he's the main guy for Ohio, as he's done a nice job supplying for the team, 17.5 points, 5 assists, shoots only about 33% from 3-point range. Your main 3-point shooter has been A.J. Shelton, who shoots 38% from 3, supplies about 7.5 points per game. You've had Aiden Hadaway step up down low with about 7.5 boards, 14 points per game. With Ohio, they've been a top 135 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, and with the way that they're able to play on the inside, and with the way that Kent State is turning the ball over left and right, and the way that Ohio is a bad team on the glass. They're outside the top 250 in terms of defensive rebound percentage, so Kent State going to get a lot of second and third chances. Kent State, they also give up a lot of second and third chances. They get a nice high-scoring expose that Ohio's able to hold in there on, so I'm going to be willing to take 3+ here with Ohio, and made a total of a 162.5, so I also like the over. 7-13, 7-14. Now we head to the Atlantic 10 tournament out there in Pittsburgh. George Washington and Fordham do battle. Our nation's first president, George Washington, a 5.5 to a 6.5 point favorite. 140.5 to 141 is the total. Made my total of 141, so 140.5. My max buy point on the over. Now you've got a Fordham team that's playing really ridiculously slow, 351st in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Meanwhile, George Washington, 112th in terms of total possessions per game, but George Washington has really excelled with their offense when they've been away from home. In road/neutral court environments, George Washington is a top 20 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Fordham as well outside the top 225 with this regard, as Fordham is just not shooting it well from 3-point range. Well, George Washington, 36.3% from 3-point range away from home. That is a top 50 mark in the country. Fordham, 28.9% overall. That is in the bottom 10 in all of college basketball, and that's a big reason why I'm going to be willing to lay with George Washington. Made them a 7-point favorite, and for George Washington, being able to get back your main man down low in Rafael Castro, I think is very big for this team, as he's really been the main rebounder for them. He's been able to supply 7+ rebounds, or send their 13+ points per game, so that really helps things out. He was still with a little bit of an injury towards the middle part of the season. Trey Autry, Garrett Johnson, these guys have been able to combine for about 23 points per game, and Autry shoots 38.5% from 3-point range. You've had Trey Dinkins do a nice job being able to give this team 9 points from 40% 3-point shooting himself. themselves. Now, where this team is vulnerable is on the inside. They're outside the top 270 with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage away from home, and just in general, they are outside the top 150 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis in a road/shoot court environment. They have a Fordham team that's been incredible on the glass. Top 30 team with regards to overall rebound percentage. They do a great job grabbing second and third chances for themselves. They don't allow their opponents second and third chances as well. And then you do have Deshaun Reeves, who's been able to give you 17.5 points per game. Shot just 30% from three. For his career, has been a much better three-point shooter. Christian Henry, 5.3 assists, 11 points per game. Rika Schulte is able to give you 9 boards at about 11 points per game. But I do think that getting back Castro is going to be very big in this game. With Fordham, they do shoot just 70% of the free throw line as well. And George Washington is a team that's going to be getting physical with you. And I do think that in the end, with Fordham being more of a country average team with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage, that George Washington does just enough to be able to get the job done. 1 to 6.5 with our nation's first president, and made a total of a 141, so I'm also in on this total over as well at a 140.5 or less. 7:15, 7:16. St. Bonaventure is going to be playing against George Mason. George Mason is a 3 to 3.5 point favorite. 141.5 to 143.5 is the total. I set a total here of a 136.5. I'm going to be in on the under. You do have a George Mason team that has been playing ridiculously slowly this year in terms of total possessions per game. They are checking in a nice hearty 348th in all of college basketball. Meanwhile, for St. Bonaventure, we're on about 217th. And for St. Bonaventure, they entered into yesterday just a rough defense in general, outside the top 270 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis overall for the season, but in games played away from home. Now, again, this was not taking into account the game prior to the LaSalle game, but that said, more on about 172nd in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They do a nice job going bombs away from three with Bonaventure. They shoot away from home 37.6% from three-point range, and they're going to be able to hold up on the glass because you do have Frank Mitchell, who's been a double-double machine. 10.6 rebounds, 16.5 points per game. You also get about 16.5 points out of Daryl Simmons, who's been able to shoot 42% from three-point range, and his team doesn't get to the free throw line often, but they do shoot 75% at the free throw line. They just really lack down low. This team is outside the top 240 in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, outside the top 230 in their own 2-point shooting percentage. And for George Mason, you've got a pair of guys in the backcourt that I really like in Jahari Long along Corey Mincy. These guys combine for about 26 points per game. Mincy shoots 40% from three, Longbow around about 35.5% from three. They both shoot above 83% at the free throw line. George Mason, top 55 team in terms of free throw attempts on a per possession basis. They've been a top 100 team with regards to rebound percentage, top 125 team in terms of taking care of the ball. So they're doing a lot of little things well. Riley Allen Patch, 6 boards, 14 points per game. I think that that's going to be enough to be able to persevere here. And I do think that with George Mason playing as ridiculously slowly as they do, and they don't put you on the free throw line. They're a top 35 team in terms of fewest free throw attempts allowed on a per possession basis. And that is going to be able to win out here and cause this game to be a bit of a slog. So, semi-line of 4.5, 1 to 4 with George Mason, and I like the under, semi-total 136.5. 7:17, 7:18, you've got Duquesne, and they're going to be playing against Rhode Island. And Rhode Island does find themselves as a small underdog here of 1.5 to 2.5 points. It's on this game between 138 to 138.5. I made Rhode Island a 3-point favorite. I like them here on the money line. It's a Duquesne group that just has had massive issues in terms of turning the ball over. They're outside the top 200 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. Now, I will say Rhode Island, they have got their own turnover issues. They're outside the top 250 in terms of their own ball security. They've been outside the top 275 with their 3-point shooting percentage, but this team gets after it. They are 7th in the country in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. Not to say that Duquesne doesn't generate turnovers. They're about 86th in the country, so they do a relatively solid job there, but I do think that the overall sloppiness is going to be getting to them. Now, Rhode Island has had a tough time being able to guard the 3-point line. They are allowing teams to shoot about 34.9% from three. That is outside the top 250 in all of college basketball, but that said, it's a Rhode Island team that as well has been able to do a pretty solid job in terms of getting their main two men going, as you've got Tyler Cochran along Jonah Hinton, hitting it hard for a combined about 27.5 points per game for Rhode Island. They do let you get to the free throw line quite a bit. They're a top 75 team in terms of free throw attempts allowed on a per possession basis on defense. Also a top 125 team, though, in terms of opponent's 2-point shooting percentage. Now they've got their top 3-point shooter, Jamari Tripp, back after he was missing for about 5 games. He supplies the team with about 12.5 points per contest. Keaton Ejejeri has been able to give you 5.5 rebounds per game. And for Duquesne, ever since Sean Hughley has come back from injury, he has not been the same guy. Since coming back from injury, he's been averaging less than 6.5 points per contest. You've got two main men in Terrence Goodyear, Jimmy Williams. These guys combine for about 32 points per game. And for this Duquesne team, they've been a top 75 team with their 2-point shooting percentage. But again, the turnover issues are just rampant for this team. Duquesne has been a top 150 team with regards to rebound percentage, but They, too, are allowing teams to shoot 34.8% from three, right on par with Rhode Island outside the top 225 with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage in a nip-and-tuck spot. Duquesne, they shoot about 71.8% the free throw line. That's about 212th in the country. They also put you on the free throw line quite frequently as well. I do think that Rhode Island going to be able to do the little things well in this game. I think that you do get a ton of turnovers, but I do think that you do get enough late game fouling to be able to get you over. So semi-total 139, I do like the over, and I like Rhode Island here. I'll ride on the money line. 719, 720. Loyola Chicago is going to be playing against Davidson. Davidson is a 6.5 point favorite. Total on this game, 132.5. With Davidson, I did set them as a favorite of 6.5 points, so I'm going to be willing to lay up to 6 with them. I saw a 7.5 pop up. I would rather take like a 6 or 5.5, as 5.5 was the opener, rather than take 7 plus. That's because I don't really trust in this Loyola Chicago team. For Davidson, they've been able to do a very nice job in terms of finding good three-point shooting. They've been a top 45 team with regards to their three-point shooting percentage, and this has been a team in Loyola Chicago that has not been good around the perimeter. For Loyola Chicago, they're outside the top 340 in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis on defense, outside the top 300 with regards to their own ball security. Loyola Chicago entered into yesterday 299th with their own three-point shooting percentage. Meanwhile, for Davidson, they've actually shot it very well away from home at 37.3%. They're overall 62nd in terms of three-point shooting percentage, to correct the point from before, but they're in the top 40 when they leave home. And for Davidson, Robert Blums has been able to take over for the team. With Robert Blums, he's been able to give you about 12 points, 3.5 boards, shoots 42% from three-point range. Parker Fredrickson, he shoots 42% from three-point. Just a Davidson team that's either here nor there on the inside. They're hovering right around about 160th with their own two-point shooting percentage and opponent's two-point shooting percentage. And if you have trepidation with this Davidson team, they do shoot 65.8% at the free throw line. That is well outside the top 350 in all of college basketball, and they have been a team that's been not necessarily the world's greatest in terms of giving themselves second and third chances, well outside the top 225 with regards to offensive rebound percentage. And that's one thing Loyola Chicago does okay. You've got Miles Rubin down low, who's give you over 2 blocks, 11 points, 7 rebounds per game, but for this Loyola Chicago team, they're also shooting about 67.5% at the free throw line. They're outside the top 200 with their own two-point shooting percentage as well. Justin Moore has been dealing with injury. That's hurt them in the backcourt. Xavier Amos has come off of injury. He's been able to give you about 12 points per contest, but just a mismatch of different guys. They do a terrible job with regards to turnover front. They've been just getting absolutely bombed from three-point range, and I think that allows Davidson to be able to get the job done, and I do think that you're going to be close enough for late game fouling. So set a line of 6.5, 6 or less. I'm going to be willing to lay with Davidson, and I do like the over at a 132 or less, semi-total at a 133.5. 721, 722. NC State is going to be playing against Virginia. This is from Charlotte, North Carolina, and NC State does find themselves as a underdog here of 5.5 points. So it's game between 147.5 to 149.5, and I made a total of a 148, so 148.5 plus. I do like the under. Keep in mind, Virginia held NC State to, I believe it was either 19 or 20 points in the first half when these two teams met up a few weeks ago. It is an NC State team that entered into yesterday 7th in the country with regards to road three-point shooting percentage at over 40%, 7th in terms of just points per possession away from home. But you have a Virginia team that's really stepped up to the plate with regards to their defense, and it's a Virginia team that is a solid three-point shooting team. I'm not going to call them amazing, but they dealt with a few injuries. They've been able to get all their main men back right now. For Virginia, they shoot about 35.5% from three. That is a top 100 mark in the country. Where their hay is really made is down low, though. This is one of the best rebounding teams in the country with the Darius Ritter giving you about 15 to 16 points, throws in their 6+ rebounds per game, and then Ogana Yesu, Jonah Grunlow. These two guys have been incredible with their shot blocking. A combined 5 shot blocks per game. Virginia is overall 13th in the country with regards to their overall rebound percentage. NC State, they're hovering more around about 219th, as they've had Van Allen Lubin be able to give you 7 rebounds per game, but he's going to have a tough time even going up against one of these ancillary guys for Virginia. As in the backcourt as well for this Virginia bunch, you've got Sam Lewis, who's been able to give you about 10.5 points, shoots 37% from 3. Malik Thomas, 12 points, 4 boards. He's able to shoot 34% from the outside. Now, I do like for NC State what you've been able to get out of Kadir Copeland, do-it-all sort of guy, 13.5 points, 6.5 assists, a 6'6" point forward that's been able to shoot 40% from 3. Darian Williams is the main attraction, 14 points. He shoots 39% from 3, and then Paul Aaron McNair has been able to shoot 42% from 3, and you do have good free throw shooting with this NC State team. You just take a look up and down the boulevard at this team. Out of their top 7 scorers, all but one of them shoot above 76.8% at the free throw line, so that helps them out quite a bit. NC State does a nice job taking care of the ball. They're a top 30 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, and Virginia's not going to put you under duress with that regard, but Virginia not giving you good looks. They're a top 35 team with regards to opponent's 3-point shooting percentage, top 15 team with regards to opponent's 2-point shooting percentage. Do think that defense wins out here, so I set my total at a 148. I do like the under. I do think, though, that NC State, with just how efficient they are on the offensive side of things, with the way that Virginia is only shooting about 71.8% at the free throw line, and they've been a little bit touch and go with regards to their own 2-point shooting percentage, I think that could be enough for NC State to be able to hold within the spread. So set my line at 4. I'm willing to take the points with Virginia, and I do like this total under as well. 723, 724. You've got Louisville and Miami doing battle, and Louisville finds themselves as a 1.5 to a 2.5 point favorite. Totals between 153.5 to 154.5, and with Louisville, I did set them as a favorite of 3.5 points. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. The main kryptonite that you've got for this Miami team, they are giving it up from 3-point range, and guess what Louisville does? They take over 52% of their field goal attempts from 3-point range, a 4th highest percentage of their shots that come from 3-point range in all of college basketball. And with Miami being outside the top 275 with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, that in my opinion is a bad matchup. Like we just saw this matchup a week ago, Louisville went on the road, got the job done out there in Coral Gables, and for Louisville, you've been able to get a lot of production out of Ryan Conwell. He's been able to spy this team with 17 plus points per contest. Now fully recognize that you've got a less than 100% Mikael Brown right now, but when he's been out there on the floor, he's been able to be a really nice mixer and shaker with about 18 points, 4.5 assists per game. Javon Hadley has been able to give you 12 points per game, and while Miami is a better rebounding team, Miami has been incredible, 9th in the country with regards to rebound percentage. You've got Malik Reneau, give you about 19 points, 7 rebounds per game. Louisville's a top 25 team themselves with regards to their own rebound percentage, so even if you are dealing with Mikael Brown being out the fold once again, which he was out yesterday, so I'm thinking that he's going to be out once again, they can stand up to the team down low with being able to have even some like Akani Ruths, who didn't see a ton of time yesterday, but he's been able to give you a few rebounds as well. And then for Miami, you've got Ernest Uday, who's been able to only give you about 8 or so points per game, but throws in their 9 plus boards, blocking after contest. And then you got the guys that are able to do a solid job from the outside. True Washington has been a mid-33 point shooter. He's been able to give you 10 plus points per contest. You've been able to get quite a bit out of the transfer from Michigan, and one Mr. Trey Donaldson with about 17 points. He shoots about 35% from 3, but in a pressure spot. Louisville shoots 77% at the free throw line. That is a top 35 percentage in the country. Miami 68.1%. That's outside the top 315. That could be the ultimate undoing here. So did set my total 157.5. Have a Louisville team that's in the top 80 in terms of total possessions per game, and Miami in the top 125. So I do like the over, and I'm willing to lay it here with Louisville. 725, 726. Florida State and Duke are going to be doing battle. No numbers up on this game because Florida State just knocked off Duke as I'm recording this, but I've got my handicap. I set Duke as a 16.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay up to 16 with them, 17 or more. Take the points with Florida State. Made a total of a 150.5. So 150 or less, I like the over. 151 or higher, the under. Duke is playing very shorthanded right now. Patrick Ngangba is dealing with an injury. Caleb Foster, he's going to be out for at the very least the first few rounds of the NCAA tournament if he's able to return at all. But yep, this team is still rock solid because you've got Cameron Boozer, who's been able to give you 22.5 points, 10.2 boards, 4 assists, stealing half per contest, and Isaiah Evans has been a do-it-all guy as well. He is a main guard for the team, but gives you darn near a block and a steal per contest. He throws in there 14.5 points per game. The defense might suffer a little bit for this bunch because Ngangba was really good with his shot blocking, and Caleb Foster has done a nice job being a little bit more of the facilitator of this offense, but Caden Boozer have to figure that he's going to be coming in off the bench, give you a little bit more, and he's been a capable distributor. Not a guy that's necessarily the strongest with his overall shooting, but is a pretty good defender as well. You got to think that Malik Brown is going to be seeing some more minutes, and Duke has a lot of depth, and Duke is currently numero uno in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, a top 5 team as well in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, and I think that the offense is going to take a little bit more of a dive than the defense with the injuries. You've got a Florida State team that's looking to gun it, 46th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, and boy, oh boy, do these guys love to bomb it from 3. They're a top 15 team in terms of percentage of their field goal attempts that come from 3-point range. Entered into yesterday, though, outside the top 250 with their 3-point shooting percentage at about 32.5%, and to have a pair of guys in Chauncey Wiggins along with Robert McCray who've been able to combine for 29 points per game between the two of them. They do shoot about 35.5% from 3-point range. Leauges Jones has been able to throw in there about 5.5 boards, but they're just not going to be able to match up inside as Jones along with Alex Steen, who's been able to give you 5.5 rebounds per game. Lone 2 guys on the roster give you 4+ boards per game. Florida State outside the top 200 with regards to rebound percentage. It's Florida State team that's been solid in terms of generating turnovers. They're a top 75 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, but They are going to be had down low by a Duke team that is both in the top 10 with their own 2-point shooting percentage and opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. And I think that Duke is going to do a nice job taking care of the ball. They themselves have been a top 75 team in terms of generating turnovers. So I do think that Duke, despite the injuries, they get the job done here. 111-16 with Duke, 17 or more to get the points with Florida State. And then at a 150 or less in on the over, 151 or higher the under. Have to do this one without numbers, 727, 728. Clemson and North Carolina do battle out there from the Spectrum Center in North Carolina. I said North Carolina's 1.5 point favorite. 1 or less, I'm going to be willing to lay with North Carolina. 2 or more taking the points with Clemson. Made a total of a 141.5. So 141 or less in on the over, 142 or higher the under. North Carolina is a pretty mid-tempo team this year, 172nd in terms of total possessions per game. Clemson has very much been pile driving it down, 321st in terms of total possessions per game. Clemson neither here nor there with their offense, 88th in terms of points per possession. Meanwhile, you've got a North Carolina team that's more around about 61st, and for North Carolina, as we know, they're without their main man, Caleb Wilson. He's out with injury, but you still have Henry Visar, who's been giving you 16-plus points, 8-plus rebounds per game. For a team that's built around their 2-point shooting, they're a top 25 team with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. In terms of their own 2-point shooting percentage, 39th in the country, and it's a Clemson team that's been a country average team with their 3-point shooting percentage. And for North Carolina, it's been a little bit shaky, though. They've been a little bit better recently, as you've been able to have Seth Trimble come in, be able to give the team quite a bit of production, as for the season he's supplying in that neighborhood about 14 points, 2.5 assists per game, up to about 30% 3-point shooting. Luka Brogdon has been more of that main 3-point shooter at about 36%. Was expecting a little bit more of Kyan Evans. He's only been able to give you about 4.5 points, 2.5 assists per contest. And for North Carolina, even though they're not super up-tempo, the possessions that you have in their games are maximized because they're a top 35 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis on offense. On defense, they are outside the top 340 in terms of generating turnovers. Now, if you have trepidation about taking North Carolina here in this spot, they do shoot 68.5% at the free throw line. Then for Clemson, it's not like they're an amazing free throw shooting team. They're more of a country average team, hovering in that neighborhood about 71 to 71.5%, depending upon the result on Wednesday. RJ Godfrey, Carter Welling have been your main two guys, combining for about 22 points per game, and you've been able to have Justin Porter do a nice job in the backcourt, 9.5 points, shoots in the mid-30s from 3. For Clemson, they're just a really good, well-put-together defense, top 40 team in terms of points allowed on a per-possession basis, and they don't allow second and third chances. They've been a top 40 team with regards to defensive rebound percentage. Now, not really giving themselves any sort of second and third chances as well, but they've been a top 75 team with regards to both opponents' 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage. Really, the main reason why I did send North Carolina as a favorite is because this is going to be a crowd that is going to be favoring them. With this being in the state of North Carolina, I think that this is going to be a nip and tuck game, and I do think that you get some points on the board with a late foul. So 141 or less in on the over, 142 or higher the under, 1 to lay up to 1 with North Carolina, 2 or more take the points with Clemson. 729, 730. You've got Providence and St. John's doing battle for the Big East tournament. This is obviously out there at Madison Square Garden, and for St. John's, they're a 10.5 point favorite. Totals all over the place. I'm seeing as low as a 158.5, as high as a 161.5, and personally, I said a total of a 158. So at a 159 plus, I'm going to be looking at the under. You have a St. John's team that is very much playing at a rapid pace, and Providence is playing at a super rapid pace. Providence, they're 11th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. St. John's is 40th. Even with that, though, you had a 79-69 final last time these two teams match up, as St. John's has been able to do a very superb job on defense, and they are going to be out there pretty much in their home dojo in the Garden. And I will say this for St. John's, not necessarily the team that's doing an amazing job of executing on offense. 212th with regards to their 2-point shooting percentage. Have a Providence team that has been a top 125 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, and man, it's a Providence team that has really been lackadaisical with their defense. They are not providing any turnovers whatsoever outside the top 350 in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. St. John's has cranked up the tempo. They're a top 50 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, and they're overall a top 40 defense in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They really don't have a lot of direction, though, even though they're a top 100 team in terms of not turning the ball over. You have yet to find that main point guard, as right now your main two facilitators are forwards. So Mitchell, 8 points, 7 boards, 3 assists per game, and then Zuby Ejiofor is up to about 16 points, 7 boards, 3.5 assists per contest as well. The 3-point shooting has been neither here nor there, as Isaiah Sellers, Ian Jackson, they combine to shoot about 35.5% per 3 with 20.5 points per contest. It is a St. John's team doing an incredible job being a top 40 team in terms of percentage of the missed shots that result in an offensive rebound, and Providence is well outside the top 170 with regards to their defensive rebound percentage. Do have Oswin, can't pronounce his last name, who's been able to give you 2.2 blocks, 8.5 rebounds per game, but outside of that, you really only have one other player, Ryan Mella, who's been able to give you over 4.5 rebounds per game. You've been able to have some nice scoring with about 18 points per game. Jalen Sellers, who shoots 44% from 3. Jason Edwards is able to shoot about 34.5% from the outside. Corey Floyd has been a 38% 3-point shooter, but Floyd has been dealing with injury all throughout the second half of the season. So that's been a little bit of a damper on this team. Does feel like Providence has been able to do a little bit of a better job on defense, top 150 team with regards to opponent's 2-point shooting percentage. But that said, I do think that St. John's is going to be able to do a nice job controlling this game. Providence right now without their coach and Kim English, and I do think that for St. John's, they win with their defense. So my line at 12, I'm going to be willing to lay with St. John's at anything above a 158, I'm in on the under. 731, 732, it's Creighton and Seton Hall doing battle, and Seton Hall does find themselves as a 2.5 to a 3.5 point favorite. Total on this game, 133 to seeing as high as 135.5, mostly seeing about 134, and semi-total 135.5. So anything below a 135, I am going to be in on the over. Now, I recognize that these are two teams that are not necessarily looking to push tempo, especially Seton Hall, 291st in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Creighton more around about 205th, and Creighton just has not been a good defensive team all season long. They're about 218th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Interestingly, they do go into the top 150 when they're away from home. Seton Hall has just been incredible, 14th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Top 10 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. They're relatively strong on the inside. They're very strong in terms of being able to guard the perimeter as well, and it's a Seton Hall team that just has struggled with their overall shooting. They're outside the top 275 with regards to 2-point shooting percentage and 3-point shooting percentage, but they do haul in their 33.8%. Their misses as an offensive rebound, 36th in the country with that regard. Creighton, they're not giving themselves second chances. In games played away from home, they rebound 22.3% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound. That is well outside the top 300 in all of college basketball, and that's a big reason why I did set Seton Hall here as a 3.5 point favorite. Right now, we're seeing a lot of threes, even a few 2.5s. I'm willing to lay it for that reason. And for Seton Hall, you've really had a big three in terms of scoring for the team, as A.J. Stanton McCray has been able to do a nice job stepping up for the team, as when they've needed an outside shot, they've really been looking at him, as he's playing you with about 34% 3-point shooting, 12 points, about a steal and a half per contest. Adam Clark, he's the top scorer, doesn't really shoot it well from three, but 12.5 points, 4.5 assists per game. T.K. Simpkins, 10 points, he shoots about 37% from three, and then Najai Hines, along Stefan Payne, the Payne train, have been able to combine for about 12 rebounds per game. Meanwhile, for Creighton, they were getting a lot of Austin Schwartz towards the middle part of conference play. He's been just not the same player over the last few weeks. You've got Josh Hicks, who's been able to supply about 12.5 points per game, and then Blake Harper is currently shooting 36% from three-point range. Creighton overall, they shoot 35% from three, and they've been a top 100 team with regards to their 2-point shooting percentage, overall 133rd in terms of points per possession. But that said, they have been seeing a drop-off of about 16 points fewer per 100 possessions away from home rather than at home. I think that this is close enough for late fouls, and I do think that Seton Hall gets the job done. I'm willing to lay up to 3 with Seton Hall, and I do like a 135 or less over the total. 733, 734, you've got Xavier, and they're going to be playing against UConn. UConn is a 14 to a 14.5 point favorite. Total is opening up right around about a 151 after a 152.5. I'm seeing as low as a 149 out there as well. I did set my total at 148.5, so 149 plus does become my buy point on the under, and I'm going to take the points with Xavier. I did set them as a 12.5 point underdog. This is a Xavier team that without question does have their warts. They're only about 162nd in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. On the defensive side of things, they do find themselves outside the top 250 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and UConn has still been a rock solid defense. They're 10th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Does feel like the 3-point shooting has sort of come and gone for this team, as you've been able to get good production out of Solo Ball with about 14 points. He shoots only about 30% from three. Alex Caravan does a bit of everything, 13 points, 5.5 boards, 2.5 assists per game. Silas Emery, 6.5 assists per game. It's a UConn team that is above country average in terms of taking care of the ball. They don't get to the free throw line often, and they will put you at the free throw line, so that's going to be a help out Xavier a little bit in this spot. Now, for UConn, they don't allow clean looks. They're a top 35 team with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, top 15 team with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, but Xavier has been a top 75 team with regards to defensive rebound percentage, top 35 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, and while this team is awful at executing on the inside, outside the top 265 with their own 2-point shooting percentage, outside the top 275 in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, they do shoot about 36.5% for three, with Trey caroling all the way to giving you 18 points, shoots 35.5% for three. Jovan Milosevich has been able to shoot 43% from 3-point range. All right, he has been all right from 3-point range, over 40% 3-point shooter there. Malik Moore has been able to give you about 11 points per game. Really like the way that Xavier is doing the little things, and going to be getting a little bit of a tempo war here with UConn 277th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Xavier, they are checking in more around about 44th. Do think that this is going to be a little bit of a slow down game, and out there at the Garden, UConn is going to have a nice crowd, but I'm going to be willing to take the points on my line at 12.5, and at a 149 or higher, I'm going to be in on the under. 7:35, 7:36 on the card. You've got Georgetown and Villanova doing battle from MSG. No numbers up on this game, but I've got my handicap. So Villanova is a 6.5-point favorite. Won't lay up to 6 with them. 7 or more, take the points with Georgetown. And then I set a total to where a 137 or less. I'm going to like the over. 138 or higher, the under. You've got a Georgetown team that has all season long been able to do a relatively solid job with the little things. They're a top 75 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. This has not been a team that's gone into flamethrower mode from three-point range. And with regards to perimeter play, Villanova's actually been better away from home rather than at home. For Villanova, they were allowing teams from three-point range in their home games to shoot well above 35.5% from three-point. It goes down to 31.6% at a roadside shoot score venue. Meanwhile, you've got a Georgetown team that away from home, teams are only shooting about 32% from three-point range against them. Neither of these teams are going to be looking to push a ridiculous tempo, and for Georgetown, they only shoot about 32.3% from three-point range. It's actually gone up a little bit over the recent weeks, and for Villanova, 35.7% overall. Goes down to 33% away from home, but Villanova about 252nd in the country in terms of total possessions per game, and then Georgetown right in that same vein. Right now for Georgetown, they're clocking in 222nd in terms of total possessions per game. Probably went down after that game against DePaul yesterday, but the X factor here for Georgetown, in my opinion, is Vincent Iwuchukwu. He's a true 7-footer, was a former top 50 recruit that just dealt with a lot of heart issues and everything like that when he was at USC. He's come in, he's been able to give the team 12 points, 6 boards, a steal, a block per contest, and then Malik Mack and KJ Lewis have been able to do a solid job in tandem. Right now, these guys are giving you about 28.5 points per game between the two of them. Julius Alafana has been able to give you about 4 boards per contest. It is a Georgetown team that gives up a lot of second and third chances, while inside the top 225 in terms of defensive rebound percentage. And for Georgetown, this has been a group that has been okay with regards to their interior defense. They're a top 150 team with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, country average in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. And then for Villanova, they've got the top overall rebounder in this game. That would be Duke Brandon, 12.5 points, 10.5 rebounds per game. But after Bryce Lindsey was so good to begin the season with his scoring, down to about 12 points per game. You still have Arcane Lewis, who's give you about 5.3 assists, 12.5 points per game, and Villanova, top 100 team in terms of taking care of the ball, but they are shooting just 69.2% at the free throw line. That's outside the top 275 in all of college basketball. They're outside the top 155 with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. Again, their 3-point shooting percentage, that does go down the tubes a little bit away from home, and they've been another team that's been outside the top 145 with regards to defensive rebound percentage. So 1 to 8 to 6 with Villanova, 7 or more take the points with Georgetown, and then 137 or less in on the over, 138 or higher the under. 737, 738 on the card. You've got Iowa, and they're going to be playing against Ohio State, and the Ohio State University finds themselves as anywhere between a 1.5 point favorite to a 1.5 point underdog. A lot of pick'em lines out there. Totals between 138.5 to 139.5, and I do like the under. I did set my total at a 135.5. Have an Iowa team that is playing with absolutely no tempo whatsoever. They've been really efficient, but in terms of total possessions per game, 364th in all of college basketball. Iowa State is faster, but not like they're absolutely gunning it themselves. 248th in terms of total possessions per game, and for Iowa State, a very solid offense. They're currently 33rd in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Have an Iowa team that's been able to do a really good job in terms of thriving on offense themselves in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. It's a unit that does find themselves more in the neighbor about 31st in the country. Both of these teams do take a little bit of a dive away from them, though. Both of these teams scoring about 10.5 points fewer in a road/shoot score venue rather than at home. And Iowa cuts down on the amount of clean possessions in their games even further with the way that they generate turnovers. They're a top 20 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, and they do have on their side, in my opinion, the top overall player in this game. Now, I absolutely love Bruce Thornton on Ohio State as well. Shoots just below 40% from 3, and he's been able to fly about 19.5 points per game, and getting back John Mobley is massive. 15 points per game. He shoots 40% from 3, but Bennett Sturtz, 20 points, 4.5 assists, shoots 38% from 3. And it's an Iowa team that has a 44% 3-point shooter in Tavion Banks, who's been able to do a nice job in terms of helping out. Cam Maniwu has been able to give you 4.5 rebounds per game. One thing Iowa's not going to do is grab second and third chances. This team is checking in only about 174th in terms of percentage of their missed shots that result in an offensive rebound. Ohio State even further down at 193rd, but both of these teams really don't allow their opponents to grab second and third chances as well. And the big thing that Ohio State has going for them is that they've been able to do a really good job both in terms of their interior offense. They're a top 35 team with their own 2-point shooting percentage, and they guard the arc well. Ohio State is allowing teams to shoot just 30.9% from 3-point range in a roadside shoot score venue. That is a top 40 mark in the country. Iowa, meanwhile, more country average. They're allowing teams to shoot 33.8% from 3-point range overall. That said, with this Iowa team, I did set them as a 3.5 point favorite because I do love the way that they just sort of swarm on defense. They have been a little bit vulnerable on the inside, and for Iowa State, you do have someone like Devin Royal, who's been able to give you a double-figure amount of points, 5.5 rebounds per game. Christoph Tilly has been able to throw in there about 5 or so rebounds per game as well. But Iowa in a pressure spot, they shoot 77.5% at the free throw line. That is a top 30 mark in all of college basketball. Iowa State, they themselves have been a top 50 team with regards to their own free throw shooting percentage, but I do think that this Iowa team going to be able to come up with some turnovers, find a way to be able to get the job done with their strong collective. So I did set my line here at a 3.5. I'm going to be willing to take a shot on Iowa on this rather pick-em line. And I do like the under. So my total at a 135.5, 739, 740 on the card. It's Wisconsin, and they're going to be playing against Washington. Washington is an underdog of 6.5 to 7.5 points. 156.5 to 157 is the total. Maybe by total 152. I do like the under. Washington, very mid-tempo team, about 206th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Wisconsin has slowed down a little bit more recently, but still overall for the season, 127th in terms of total possessions per game. It's a Wisconsin team that they take over 50% of their field goal attempts from three. That is a top 15 mark in the country, and Wisconsin is allowing teams to shoot 38% from three-point range away from home. Washington, though, is outside the top 300 with their own three-point shooting percentage. They're only shooting about 31.5% as a collective. They do, though, have Hans Steinbeck, who's been able to give you 18.5 points, 11.6 rebounds per game, and he's actually been able to pop it at about 35.5% from three-point range. And Washington is a really good free throw shooting team. You take a look at their top four scorers, all of them shoot at least 76.7% at the free throw line. They've had Wesley Yates be able to step up in terms of giving the team 13 points per game, but his three-point shooting has taken a little bit of a dive. As a matter of fact, outside of Steinbeck, you don't have pretty much anyone on the roster that shoots about 34% from three-point range. In Washington games, they do a nice job in terms of protecting the ball themselves, top 100 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, but they also give their opponents plenty of clean possessions as well. They're outside the top 300 with regards to turnovers generated on a per possession basis, but they allow opponents to shoot 33.3% from three, top 145 mark in the country. They're hovering right around about 100th in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and Wisconsin is one of those textbook do the little things well sorts of teams, as they do shoot away from home 37% from three. That's a top 50 mark in the country, but they're also a team that ranks in the top 10 in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. They shoot 78.2% at the free throw line. That is a top 20 mark in the country, and you've got two headline scorers, Nick Boyd, John Blackwell, that combine for about 38.5 points per game. Between the two of them, they're shooting about 36.5% from three. Austin Rapp has good versatility with about 9.5 points, 3.5 boards. He shoots 36% from three, and then Nolan Winter makes it very chilly for teams, as he's been able to give you 8.5 boards, 13.5 points per game. Both of these teams hovering right around about 65th in the country in terms of percentage of missed shots that become an offensive rebound for opponents, so they're not allowing a lot of second and third chances. I do think that that's going to help you stay under, and with Washington also doing the little things, taking care of the ball, they've been a good free throw shooting team. I think they do just enough to be able to hold within this number, so by total at a 152. I like the under, and at 6.5 plus, I'm going to be willing to take the points here with Washington, 741, 742. You've got Purdue and Northwestern doing battle in the Big Ten tournament, and with Purdue, they are 10.5 to 11.5 point favorites. Totals anywhere between 144 to 145.5, so we've got quite a bit of a range here. I did set my total at a 144, so anything above a 144, I'm going to be willing to dive in on the under. You've got a Purdue team that has been very much up, down, all around here the last few weeks. They have not been able to cover a lot of spreads, but interestingly for Purdue, their defense has been much better away from home rather than at home. At home, they allow opponents to shoot 35.9% from three-point range. That goes down to 32% away from home. That's a top 100 mark when they're away from home. It is a Purdue team that has had issues down low. They're outside the top 235 with regards to opponents' two-point shooting percentage, but have a Northwestern team that hasn't been able to excel down low. You've got a Purdue team that overall in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, they're outside the top 150, but again, away from home, that goes into the top 45. Meanwhile, for Northwestern, the one thing that they've been able to do on defense, as they're right now about 195th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, has been guard the three-point line. They're not generating the same amount of turnovers that they did a season ago. They're well outside the top 225 with regards to rebound percentage, but games played away from home, they allow opponents to shoot 33.2% from three-point range. That is a top 110 mark in all of college basketball. Northwestern takes care of the ball. Top 10 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. Nick Martinelli is a guy that's able to go in there and just completely change a game. 22.8 points, 6.5 boards from three-point range. He's right now popping it at about 41%. Meanwhile, you don't have anyone else on the roster that shoots above like 31% from three, other than Jake West. West does shoot about 37.5% from three, but a very low volume shooter. He only gives you about 5 points per contest. You've been able to have Trey Singleton come in there, be able to give you about 7.5 points, 5 rebounds per game. Arrington Page, he's been a essentially suffer a block, 4.5 boards, 10 points per game, but outside of Martinelli, you don't have too much with the team. Meanwhile, for Purdue, it's just been a big fat disappointment for the team, but you know that they've got so much talent in the backcourt in Braden Smith along with Fletcher Lawyer, combining for about 28.5 points per game. With both of these guys, they combine to shoot over 41% from three. Smith gives you 8.7 assists and 2.8 turnovers per game, 2 steals per contest, and then Trey Kaufman-Wren Oscar Clough, they've been good down low. They've been able to give you a combined 16 rebounds per game. Recognize that the Purdue 2-point shooting percentage defense has not necessarily been the best, but they've been able to do a nice job in terms of not allowing second and third chances. Now for Purdue, not necessarily going to grab a ton of second and third chances themselves, but in games played away from home, teams are only grabbing about 22.6% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound. That is a top 10 mark in the country, and you're not going to get a lot of tempo in this game. With Purdue, in terms of total possessions per game, this team is checking in 324th in all of college basketball. Northwestern, a little bit faster at 317th, so I did set a total of 144. I had a 144.5 or higher. I'm in on the under end. Could only make my line 9, so I'm going to be willing to take 10 plus here with Northwestern. 743, 744 on the card. You've got Rutgers, and they're going to be playing against UCLA. Currently doing this without numbers, but I've got my handicap. Anything of double figures, I'm going to be willing to take the points with Rutgers. I made them a 10-point dog, 9.5 or less willing to lay with UCLA, as I did make them the 10-point favorite, and then made a total of a 142. So 141.5 or less in on the over, 142.5 or higher the under. You've got a UCLA team that has been quite vulnerable down low. They're outside the top 250 with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. That said, Rutgers is outside the top 320 with their own 2-point shooting percentage. Rutgers and UCLA, not a pair of teams, are going to be looking to push up tempo for UCLA, about 299th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, and Rutgers entered into Wednesday, 261st in the country in terms of total possessions per game. We'll say Tyreek Francis has been able to step up in a big way for this Rutgers group right now. Give you a little bit over 17 points, right around about 3 assists per game. Shoots 35% from 3, 90% at the free throw line. And Rutgers, they only shoot about 32.5% from 3. They're the better team in terms of hauling in their second and third chances. So this is a UCLA team that just has not been able to give themselves second and third opportunities. And for both of these teams, it's been a little bit of a struggle for them, giving up second and third chances. Rutgers overall 291st in the country in terms of overall rebound percentage. UCLA more around about 195th. UCLA just has much more three-point shooting. They've been a top 20 team with their three-point shooting percentage. Tyler Bilodeau gives you 15 plus points per game. He shoots over 40% from 3. Sky Clark was dealing with injury, but he's back to shooting 45 plus percent from 3-point range, and he's been able to give this team right around about 12 points per game. Even though Donovan Dent doesn't really give you a lot from the outside, he's been able to supply about 6.5 assists per game. For a UCLA team, that's a top 125 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, and for UCLA, their three-point shooting percentage does go down to 36.7% away from home, but still relatively solid overall. Big thing for them is just being able to button up inside, and they do go up against a Rutgers team that they have been getting absolutely blasted from the outside. They entered into yesterday allowing teams to shoot 38.3% from 3-point at a roadside shoot score venue, and it's not like this team is necessarily great down low other than Emmanuel Agbole, who's been able to give you 6.1 rebounds per game. Don't have a single guy that gives you over 4.4 rebounds per game, so the kryptonite of UCLA not necessarily being the world's greatest team down low. That's going to be massive. You've got Trent Perry, give you about 12.5 points. He shoots over 40% from 3-point, and for UCLA, this is a team that when they get to the free throw line, they do shoot about 76.3% at the free throw line, and they take great care of the ball. Top 15 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. So 9.5 or less, 1 to lay with UCLA, 10.5 or more, take the points with Rutgers, 141.5 or less, and on the over, 142.5 or higher, the under. Now we get the SEC tournament, 745, 746. It's Kentucky. They're going to be taking on Missouri. Missouri finds themselves as an underdog here of 3.5 points. Between 148 to 149.5 is the total. Going to be willing to lay with Kentucky. I did set them as a 4.5 point favorite. Right now with Kentucky, they've been able to get a lot of production out of Ortega Owe. He was a little bit of a disappointment to begin the season, but has been able to come on strong here down the stretch. He's up to about 18 points, 4.5 boards, 3 assists per game, shooting about 35.5% from 3. Denzel Aberdeen has also been able to shoot about 35.5% from 3. Colin Chandler has actually been your best outside shooter at about 43% from 3. And then Mohamed Diabate, Malachi Moreno, they combine for about 12 rebounds per game. Missouri has always been a team that's been pretty rock solid with their offense, but has not been great down low, and it's been a little bit of a reversal this season. They are a team that's outside the top 250 with regards to ball security, and they're just giving it up from 3. They're allowing teams to shoot 36.7% from 3-point range. That is 337th in all of college basketball. Meanwhile, it's a Kentucky team that I'm not calling them amazing with their outside shooting defense, but they're 70th now. That does go up to 36.5% from 3-point range away from home, 29.1% at home, so a pretty significant home and road split there. But that's Mark Mitchell for this Missouri team. He's up to 16 plus points. He's giving you about 7 rebounds per game. You've had Jaden Stone be a nice double-figure scorer that's been shooting in the high 30/40% from 3-point range. Jacob Cruz has been a little bit all over the place and deal with injury, so that's been a little bit of an issue, but Missouri up to 62nd in the country with regards to their overall rebound percentage. It's a Kentucky team that's more around 38, so they're going to be at a little bit of a disadvantage here. Now, Kentucky does not generate turnovers. They are well outside the top 260 in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, so that kryptonite for Missouri, that's going to be, shall we say, buried a little bit in. For Missouri, top 70 team in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, top 240 team with their own 2-point shooting percentage, and T.O. Barrett has been able to come on strong. He's been given the team overall for the season about 9 points per game, but had that 28-point game against Tennessee, scored double figures in 3 of the last 4 games, but really doesn't shoot it well from 3. And if it comes down to free throws, Missouri, they are shooting 68.7% the free throw line. That's right around about 300th in the country. Meanwhile, for Kentucky, they should be able to execute at the charity stripe. They're shooting more around about 72.5% at the free throw line. So I did make a total here of a 150.5. I think that Missouri being able to protect the ball is going to help you out to the over. So do like the over, and I'm going to be willing to lay up to 4 here with Kentucky. 747, 748. Auburn is going to be playing against Tennessee. Tennessee does find themselves as a mid-tier favorite here, as you're going to be laying with them 5 to 5.5 points. So on this game, it is 147.5 to 149.5. So a little bit of an all over the place total, but I do like the under. I set my total at 147.5. Fully recognize that Auburn is outside the top 275 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and it's an Auburn team that's fast, but they're not necessarily aggressively fast. 108th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Tennessee, once again, a mid-tempo team. 203rd in the country in terms of total possessions per game, and for Tennessee, it's not quite the defense that we've seen in the past. It's still solid, though. They're 39th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Auburn has been a top 15 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, but they're a relatively pedestrian three-point shooting team. Again, Taj Pettiford, if you look at the raw numbers of like 15 points, 3 assists per game, you would think that he's having a relatively okay season, but I would say he's been a disappointment. He's shooting less than 30% from three-point range. A lot of the offense is just based around Keyshawn Hall. 20.5 points, 7 boards, 2.5 assists. He shoots about 40% per 3. And then Kevin Overton has been able to come on strong as well. He shoots 38% per 3, give you about 13.5 points per game. It's an Auburn team that they're solid down low, but they're not necessarily the most amazing team down low. They're a top 25 team in terms of percentage of their missed shots that result in an offensive rebound. They hover right around about 100th with regards to their 2-point shooting percentage, and their specialty has been getting to the free throw line. This team is a top 10 team in the country with regards to free throws attempted on a per possession basis. And then you take a look at this Tennessee defense, and they've been a team that has been pretty solid in terms of disallowing free throw attempts. They're about 212th in the country in terms of free throw attempts allowed on a per possession basis. It's an Auburn team that they're about country average with regards to their fouling as well, and Tennessee has just been able to maul the glass. Depending upon the day, they're either number 1 or number 2 in terms of percentage of their missed shots that result in an offensive rebound. Their undoing has been turnovers. Outside the top 225 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis on offense. Auburn, they're outside the top 200 in terms of generating turnovers, so that's going to help them out. As Jacoby Gillespie, he does have the nearly 2.5 turnovers per game, but 18 points, 5.5 assists per game. They've got J.P. Estrella, who's been up, down all around this season. He's been able to give you 10 points per game, and Nate Amon, he did miss the last few games of the regular season, so the team had to get used to just life without him in general. For Nate Amon, in terms of his status going into the SEC tournament, it does feel like he's probably going to be able to go in this game because he was a limited participant in practice, so that's something that you do want to be taking a look at. I've got him sort of half in, half out, 17.5 points, 6.5 boards out of Amon, but for this Tennessee team, even if he doesn't play, you still have Jalen Carey, who's able to give you 7.5 points, 6 rebounds per game. The three-point shooting goes down because Amon has been able to do a solid job with regards to his outside shooting and his overall versatility here in conference play, but even someone like a Bishop Boswell has been shooting 40% from 3, 6.5 points per game. So this was sort of handicapped with Amon half in, half out for Tennessee. And Tennessee, they do shoot just 69.5% at the free throw line, but I'm willing to lay up to 5 and not half a point more with them. And I do like the under. Semi-total 147.5, 749, 750 on the card. Ole Miss is going to be playing against Georgia, and UGA does find themselves as a favorite here, as you're laying with them 6.5 points. 156.5 is the lowest total I'm seeing as high as 159.5. So this is a total that is very much all over the place, but I made my total a 158.5. Personally, would rather have a 156.5 to the over rather than 159.5 to the under, mainly because with Georgia, this is a team that's just absolutely gutting it right now. In terms of total possessions per game, they are 9th in the country, and Georgia's allowing so many second and third chances outside the top 315 in terms of defensive rebound percentage. Now, I will say this about Georgia. They also lead the country in terms of shot blocks per game. You've been able to get 2.5 blocks, 5.5 rebounds, and 10 points per game out of Samatu Surreal. Additionally, you don't get a lot of scoring out of Justin Abson with only about 3 points, 4 rebounds per game, but he throws in their block and a half per game as well. For Georgia, they're up to shooting about 34.5% from three-point range. They were really rough with that to begin the season. In conference play, they've been shooting 36.8% from three-point range. Blue Kane and Jeremiah Wilkerson have been your top scorers. They combine for about 31 points per game. Wilkerson has been coming off the bench a little bit, and he's been shooting 36% from three. Marcus Millender, he's really that top outside shooter at about 40% from three, 12 points per game. And Cannon Catchings, he all of a sudden has been able to really catch some fire for this team. He's been able to score 15-plus points in 3 out of the last 4 games, he's up to shooting about 38.5% from three-point. And for Ole Miss, yay, verily, the fact that they were able to get a win yesterday, but man, it's been rough for them. They're outside the top 170 in terms of both points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis, getting drilled on the glass themselves. They're outside the top 250 with regards to their defensive rebound percentage. As a matter of fact, Malik Dia, lone guy on the roster, it gives you over 4.5 rebounds per game, 5.8 boards, 14 points per game, and then Elias Cardine has been able to give you a little bit of versatility, 11 points, about 3.5 assists, 3.5 rebounds per game, and one thing Ole Miss has been able to do a really good job of is protect the ball. They're a top 30 team with regards to fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, and Georgia has been a top 85 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. But that said, for this Ole Miss team, even though they protect the ball, they're outside the top 200 with their own 2-point shooting percentage, outside the top 170 with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, and that's where I think that Georgia is going to be able to just eat them up in this game. Georgia has been a very efficient team on the inside. They're a top 35 team with their own 2-point shooting percentage, top 125 team in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. So, like Georgia in the spot, want to lay up to 7 with them, set them as a 7.5 point favorite, and at the 156.5, I like the over, set my total at a 158.5, 751, 752. This is a game without numbers, as it's Texas A&M facing off against Oklahoma. Oklahoma had to survive and advance late last night, but I've got my handicap. I set Texas A&M as a 4.5 point favorite. Won't lay up to 4 with them. 5 or more, taking the points with Oklahoma, and then set a total where a 158 or less. I'll like the over 159 or higher, the under. Now, you do have a Texas A&M team that is certainly playing at a harebrained pace. They are currently, in terms of total possessions per game, 10th in the country. Oklahoma is much more of a mid-tempo team, 160th in terms of total possessions per game, and Oklahoma is a pretty solid 3-point shooting team. They're shooting 37.2% overall. That does fall to about 33.7% in a roadside shoot square venue. For Texas A&M, they're right there, 39th in the country with their own 3-point shooting percentage at 36.5%. They shoot a little bit better away from home at 34.6% than Oklahoma, and I've noticed this with Texas A&M. They've been a much better perimeter defense when they've been away from home rather than when they have been at home. For A&M, right now they are allowing teams to shoot overall this season right around about 31.9%. That falls at 28.1% in a roadside shoot square venue. If you look at games played away from home, they're actually 3rd in the country in opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. Oklahoma, they are not that. They are allowing teams to shoot 35.5% for 3 points away from home, and for Oklahoma, the forte of this team is maximizing possessions. They're currently a top 35 team in the country in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, with only about 10 turnovers per game, and then they've been a team that has not really forced the issue on defense. They're outside the top 240 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, and they've been about 100th with their own 2-point shooting percentage. You do have Tay Davis, who's been able to give you 12.6 rebounds per game. Nigel Pack just packs it in, 45% 3-point shooter, 16 points per game. Xavier Brown gives you about 15.5 points per game, and Brown and Pack, they combine to shoot about 86.5% at the free throw line. For Xavier Brown, shoots about 36.5% from 3, and then you've been able to get some good rebounding out of Muhammad Wagyu with about 6.5 rebounds per game. Cool Atak being in and out of the lineup due to injury has been hurting this team a little bit, and while Texas A&M is not necessarily the most stout team down low, they probably have the best rebounder in this game, or Rashawn Agee, give you 14.7 points, 8.5 rebounds per game, and A&M has been gashed down low. They're outside the top 240 with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, but this is an A&M team that's been solid in terms of generating turnovers, so going to be a little bit of a strength-on-strength battle with the way that this Oklahoma team takes care of the ball and the way that Texas A&M, in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, is right now a top 80 team in the country, though that does go outside the top 100 when they're away from home. You do have, though, Rylan Griffin, who's been able to shoot 42.5% from 3 with about 11.5 points per game. Ruben Dominguez is a 40% 3-point shooter with 10.5 points per game, and it's an A&M team that they themselves shoot about 74% at the free throw line, and We've had Pop Isaacs really come on strong here in conference play. He's been able to shoot about 39.5% for 3, 10 points, right around about 2.5 assists per game. And A&M, they themselves pretty solid in terms of taking care of the ball, a top 110 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. And it's an A&M team that will put you on the free throw line, but they themselves top 50 team in terms of free throw attempts on a per possession basis. So interesting circumstance here. 4 less, 1 delay with A&M, 5 or more take the points with Oklahoma, 158 or less, like the over, 159 or higher, the under. And now we hit the Big 12 tournament. This is 7:53, 7:54 out there in Kansas City, Missouri. Iowa State and Texas Tech do battle. Texas Tech, an underdog of 3.5 points. Throughout this game, it is 143.5, and with Iowa State, I did set them as just a 2.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to take the points. Both of these teams have been very rock solid with their 3-point shooting. You've got 2 teams that rank in the top 12 with their 3-point shooting percentage, and say what you will about JT Toppin being out, that does no doubt hurt this Texas Tech team, but Texas Tech without JT Toppin has actually been averaging more points per possession without him than they have with him in his 5 games. Now, I think that you're going to see regression to the mean here better, but the 3-point shooting here is just absolutely superb. Christian Anderson, 19.5 points, 7.8 assists. He shoots 43% from 3. Donovan Atwell shoots just a hair below 46% from 3 with about 13.5 points per game. And Luke Bogamboy down low has been able to give the team 1.7 blocks, 5 points per game. He's not the same offensive player that JT Toppin was, but he's going to be able to be a rock-solid defensive player for a Texas Tech team that has been a top 50 team with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. Iowa State overall top 10 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, turnovers generated on a per possession basis, and Texas Tech hovers right around about 100th with regards to turnovers on a per possession basis, but Iowa State also closer at about 90th in the country in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. So Texas Tech has been the better perimeter defense, and let's say Iowa State needs to cover this game at the free throw line. They shoot 68% of the charity stripe. That's 325th in the country. Now, Milan Memaselevic has been giving you 17 points on 50% 3-point shooting. Joshua Jefferson, great versatility, 16.5 points, 7.5 boards, 5 assists per contest, and then Tamon Lipsby, he's the quarterback of the defense, 2 steals, 5 assists, 13.5 points, really doesn't give you much from the outside, but even Jabarian Bateman has been able to shoot about 39% from 3. He's been a nice ancillary piece, but with Texas Tech being a team that does such a great job in terms of guarding the arc, it's an Iowa State team that's better with regards to their interior play than they've been in the past, but they're still not necessarily supreme there, and with Iowa State having some concerns at the free throw line, I do think that Texas Tech is going to be able to hold in there, so somehow line at 2.5. I'm going to be one to take the points here with Texas Tech, and it's at a total of 142.5, so 143 plus. I like the under. 755, 756. You've got Arizona, and they're going to be playing against Central Florida. Central Florida is an underdog of 16 to 16.5 points. It's all this game between 158.5 to 161.5, so very much an all-over-the-place total line. I took the under. I set my total 154.5. Central Florida did have to play an overtime game against Cincinnati, so that takes a little bit out of you. And overall, Central Florida is a fast team, but they're not necessarily like completely gunning it. 81st in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Arizona, they are currently 45th, and Arizona is such a balanced team. 17th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. 4th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. One thing they're really not going to do is put you under duress. They're only about 164th in the country in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, so that helps out a Central Florida team that's had a few turnover woes this season. Central Florida has been a okay team in terms of guarding the 3-point line, about 162nd, with teams shooting about 33.5% from 3-point against them. Much more vulnerable on the inside. Meanwhile, you've got an Arizona team that's been good at guarding the arc, 39th in the country in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, and that is big because Central Florida entered in the game against Cincinnati, a top 40 team with their 3-point shooting percentage, but even though they went 3 of 24 for the outside in that game, they still found a way to be able to get the job done because they've got Michael Silva, give you about 11.5 points, 7.5 rebounds per game. Is he going to be able to win the battle against Monte Uvas along with Toby Awaka, who combined for about 18 to 18.5 rebounds per game? No. And then you've got Braden Burries, what I believe has been one of the most improved players in all of college basketball. 15 plus points per game out of him. He's shooting in that neighborhood about 40% from 3. But Riley Kugel, Themis, Folks, they entered in the day on Wednesday, both shooting about 40% from 3 between the two of them. You're getting about 29 points per game, and Folks has been able to give you 6.8 assists per game. Again, 3.2 turnovers per game. That's been a little bit unsightly, but it is a Central Florida team that has been able to do a very rock-solid job in terms of finding a way to the free throw line. They shoot about 75% when they get to the free throw line, and they have been themselves a top 75 team in terms of rebound percentage, so they're not going to get completely blasted down low against an Arizona team that does have one of the best front lines in all of college basketball. And now you've got Koa Pete back as well, who's been able to give you about 13.5 points, 5.5 boards, 2.5 assists per game. Have to love the game of Jaden Bradley, who's been one of your top 3-point shooters at about 38%, 13 points per game. But I do think that Arizona, even though they're going to be able to get the job done in this ordeal, and I think that it could be comfortably, that this number has went a little bit out of whack. So I did set my number here at a 154.5 with regards to total. I like the under and made Arizona the 12.5 point favorite. So wanted to take the big number here with Central Florida with the points. 757, 758, BYU and Houston are going to be doing battle. Houston is a favorite here of 8.5 points. So on this game, it opened up in some places as high as a 151.5, mostly seeing 147.5 to 148.5 in the market right now. And I do like the under. I set my total at a 145.5. You've got a BYU team that certainly has been gunning it this season in terms of total possessions per game, 65th in the country. Houston is obviously looking to play very slow and controlled. This team is 322nd in terms of total possessions per game, and with having Richie Saunders now out, you only got 2 guys on the BYU roster that give you over 8.5 points per game, and Houston does a supreme job in terms of guarding the arc. Top 50 team with opponents shooting 31.5% from 3 against them. It's a BYU team that has been well outside the top 115 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. That was entering into Wednesday, and they did a nice job holding down West Virginia. BYU's main kryptonite has been their perimeter defense. They're about 283rd in the country, with opponents shooting about 35.5% from 3-point against them. They're not necessarily the world's worst team down low, and for Houston, they have been outside the top 100 in terms of defensive rebound rebound percentage. They do allow a few second and third chances, and BYU with Kabakita being able to give you about 7 rebounds per game. They've been a top 45 team in terms of their rebound percentage, and you've obviously got AJ Dabansa, who's been Mr. Do-It-All for this team. He just goes out there night after night, and he gives you 25.7 boards, 4 assists per contest, and then Robert Wright has been Mr. Wright, shoots 41% from 3, 18.5 points, 4.5 assists per game, but question becomes, without Saunders, what are you going to be able to get out of someone like Kennard Davis, who's been able to give you about 8 points per game? You've had Alec Kostic, hopefully I said that correct, being able to give you about 4 points per game. He actually shoots 39% for 3, but you're looking at a lot of mixers and shakers for the team. Meanwhile, for Houston, I do feel like sometimes there's a little bit of an over-reliance on Kingston Flemings. He and Emmanuel Sharp have been very sharp. They've been able to combine for 32.3 points per game. Both shoot 37.6% for 3. And Milo Zuzan, after a rough start to the season from 3-point, has been in conference play, shooting 42% from the outside, and he continues to headline things for this backcourt as he's been able to give you about 4 assists, 11.5 points per game. Chris Senek along Joseph Tugler down low combined for about 12.5 boards, and you've been able to get about a block and a half per contest out of Tugler as well. And it's a Houston team that they just do such a great job taking care of the ball. Top 5 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, which allows them to really be able to slow things down. So I do think that you get a little bit more of a slug of game. So I told 145.5. I like the under, but with Houston giving up those second and third chances, and they're a team that they are outside the top 100 with their own 2-point shooting percentage. They've got a few wards on offense. I think that BYU holds in there. So semi-line at 7.5. I'm willing to take 8+ here with BYU, and I'm going to be in on the under as well. 759, 760 on the card. It is Kansas and TCU doing battle, and this game currently does not have numbers. TCU won very late on Wednesday, but I've got my handicap set Kansas as a 5.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay up to 5 with them, 6 or more, taking the points with TCU, and then set a total of a 141.5. So 141 or less in on the over, 142 or higher the under. Have a TCU team that has really bumped up their tempo. They're a top 100 team now in terms of total possessions per game. Kansas has been a very mid-tempo team this year. They're about 185th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Darren Peterson has been a big enigma because if you look at Kansas over the last few games, they've actually been worse on offense when he's been playing 30-plus minutes. They actually had their best production against Kansas State when he came in off the bench for senior day, so that was interesting to say the least, as Peterson, and there's no denying his talent, 20 points per game, shoots 39% for 3, but feels like there might be something lingering, whether it's in the head, whether it's an injury, so that's been interesting to look at, but you know that this Kansas defense has been one of the best in the country, as you've got Flory Badunga has been able to give you 2.5 blocks, nearly 10 rebounds per game. Bryson Tiller has been able to give you 5+ boards. He's able to supply about a block per game as well. This is a Kansas group that in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis right now checks in 34th in the country, despite not really generating any turnovers whatsoever. Well outside the top 3 in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. TCU top 45 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, and they entered into yesterday 39th in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, albeit that Oklahoma State game probably jacked up those numbers a little bit. And for TCU, they've been a team that has been outside the top 140 in terms of points per possession. Again, then the games yesterday probably upped out those numbers, as David Punch has been able to give you that punch down low, 13.5 points, 6.5 boards, right around about 2 blocks per game. Xavier Edmonds is shooting 40% for 3 with about 13 points, 6.5 rebounds per game. And then Brock Harding, he does a nice job just being able to lead this offense, 6 assists and 2 turnovers per game, supplies nearly 2 steals, 8.5 points per game. And for TCU, it is a team that has been very solid on the glass as well. They are a top 100 team with regards to rebound percentage. They don't allow a lot of second and third chances. They're a top 100 team in terms of offensive rebound percentage, and Kansas really doesn't give themselves any sort of second and third chances whatsoever. They are well outside the top 200 with regards to defensive rebound percentage, and they have been giving up probably too many second and third chances to their opponents as well in terms of defensive rebound percentage. This is a Kansas group that right now checks in right around about 142nd in the country in games played away from them. Teams grab about 29.5% of their misses as an offensive rebound. So 5 or less, I'm going to be willing to lay with Kansas. 6 or more, taking the points with TCU, and then 141 or less, like the over, 142 or higher the under. Now we head out to lovely Las Vegas for 761-762. UNLV and Utah State do battle out there in the Mountain West tournament. Right now, Utah State a 6.5 to a 7-point favorite. Totals between 157.5 to 158.5, and with Utah State, I did lay it with them. I did set them as an 8.5 point favorite. Utah State in games played away from home are 4th in the country in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, and this is pretty much a home game here for UNLV, even though it's going to be listed as a conference tournament game. They're playing at the Thomas & Mack Center. They entered into yesterday shooting just 32.7% from 3-point at the Thomas & Mack Center. Now, Utah State allows opponents away from home to shoot a little bit over 35% for 3. They've been just outside of country average with that regard, but they're excelling on the inside. Top 70 team in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. Their own 2-point shooting percentage is 10th in the country, with MJ Collins leading things with 17.5 points per game. He shoots about 37% for three. Mason Fosloff has been able to give you about 16 points, 5.5 boards. He shoots 42% from three-point. And Carson Templin has been able to do a nice job down low with about 4 boards, nearly a steal and a block per contest. And UNLV, they've actually been a pretty solid team in terms of generating turnovers as well. They're a top 85 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, which I do think helps you to the under. Somebody told 152.5, so I am going to be in on that under. Dre Gibbs-Lawhorn has been your main man with 21 points, shooting 42% per three. Kamani Hamilton was the top scorer in the game yesterday that got UNLV to this stage. He's been averaging about 12.5 to 13 points per game. And then Tyron Jones does give you multiple blocks per game. UNLV is just outside the top 185 with regards to opponent's 2-point shooting percentage, and they're getting destroyed from three. They are allowing teams to shoot over 35.5% for three, outside the top 275 with that regard. It's a UNLV team that's been right around about 160th, 170th with regards to rebound percentage, and they themselves are outside the top 175 with regards to ball security. I think that Utah State generates some turnovers and gets the job done. I'm going to be willing to lay it here with Utah State. I did set them as a favorite of 8.5 points, and like the under, I set my total here at a 152.5, 763, 764. You've got Nevada, and they're going to be playing against Grand Canyon. Grand Canyon is a 1.5 to 2.5 point favorite. 139.5 to 140.5 is the total, and with the Grand Canyon, I did set them as a 1-point underdog. I like Nevada here outright on the money line for Grand Canyon. It's just hard to trust in this offense, even though the defense has really been supreme for this team. Grand Canyon is one of the worst 3-point shooting teams away from them in all of college basketball. They overall shoot 31.5% from three, which is 305th in the country. That goes down to 28.5% in a road/court environment. And for this Grand Canyon team, just overall in terms of their rebound percentage, they have been dominant there. They're 25th in the country in terms of their overall rebound percentage. But this has been a Nevada team that has been able to do a relatively solid job in terms of not allowing a ton of second and third chances with Nevada in terms of defensive rebound percentage. They are 74th in the country. Teams are grabbing only about 25.5% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound. And this is a Nevada team that just continues to do a lot of the little things well. This team away from home is shooting over 36.5% from three-point range. You're a top 50 team with regards to overall outside shooting. Corey Camper gives you 17 points, 2.5 assists, shoots 41% from three. Tayshaun Comer shoots 36.5% from the outside, throws in there about 11.5 points per game. Nevada, top 50 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, and then Vaughn Weems gives you 9 points. He shoots 45% from three, other than Elijah Price, who gives you 8.5 rebounds per game. Really, nobody else gives you 5+ boards per contest, but they've done a nice job holding up there. Now, where they're very weak is on the inside, outside the top 320 with regards to their own 2-point shooting percentage. Meanwhile, for Grand Canyon, you do have Nana Wusu-Anane, who gives you 9 points, 8.5 boards, and he throws in there about a steal and a block per contest as well. Jaden Henley, 17.5 points, 5.5 boards, 3 assists, doesn't necessarily pop it well from three, and Brian Moore has been able to give you more, shoots 39% from three-point range. Mekhi Williams does throw in there about 13.5 points per game, and if Grand Canyon can find a way to the free throw line, that's where they've really been able to make their hay. They shoot about 76% at the free throw line. That is a top 75 mark in the country, and Nevada has been actually really good in terms of getting to the free throw line. In terms of free throws attempted on a per possession basis, this is a unit that does find themselves in the top 30 in the country, and Grand Canyon is a team that's going to put you on the free throw line a little bit. They are outside the top 235 in terms of free throw attempts allowed on a per possession basis, and Nevada, they themselves are going to put you on the free throw line, so it's an interesting ordeal. I do think that with the way that Nevada takes care of the ball, they're able to match up on the glass, and just don't have faith in Grand Canyon knocking down shots, that Nevada gets the job done. So I said Nevada is a 1-point favorite. I like them on the money line, and I'm in on the under. I set my total at a 137, 765, 766 is Colorado State taking on San Diego State. This is in the Mountain West tournament, and right now for San Diego State, we do not have any openers on this game, but I did set them as a 6-point favorite. So 5.5 or less, one to lay it with San Diego State, 6.5 or more, take the points with Colorado State, and then 139 or for less, and on the over 140.5 or higher, the under. It's a Colorado State team that's been bombing it from three-point range. Or a top 15 team with regards to our overall three-point shooting percentage, and it's traveled relatively well. Going into yesterday, shooting 39.7% from three-point range away from home. That is a top 10 mark in the country. San Diego State started out super hot from three-point range to begin the season, so shooting about 35.5% from three. That's the top 100 mark in the country. Where they've really been able to make their bones, though, has been on the defensive side of things with turnovers. They're a top 25 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, and overall in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, San Diego State is 44th in the country. They do allow about 11.4 points more per 100 possessions away from home rather than at home, and for San Diego State, they're allowing teams to grab about 31.9% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound. Good news for them, Colorado State doesn't grab any sort of second and third chances, and they've been about 180th with regards to their defensive rebound percentage as well. It's a Colorado State team that just has been able to find really good looks from three-point range, as each of your top 4 scorers shoot over 40% from three-point range, and that would be a quartet of double-figure scores in Kerry Booth, Brandon Rechsteiner, Kyle Jorgensen, and Josh Passarelli, with the lone guy being able to give you over 4.2 rebounds per game being Booth, who's been able to give you about 5.5 boards. Just throwing there a block block per contest as well. Jevin Muniz, 9.5 points, 5 assists per game. With San Diego State generating turnovers, it is an issue that Colorado State is outside the top 290 with regards to turnovers on a per possession basis, but they also do shoot 77% at the free throw line. Colorado State's been rough with their defense. They're outside the top 275 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and San Diego State surprisingly has sped themselves up with their tempo, and Colorado State playing very, very slowly. Colorado State, bottom 5 team in the country in terms of total possessions per game and games played away from home. San Diego State is 90th in terms of total possessions per game, but more around country average in games played away from home. They had that double overtime game against Troy, the triple overtime game against Boise State that did throw numbers a little bit out of sorts. You have Reese, Sticks, and Waters giving you about 13 points, shooting 36% from 3, and then Magoon-Gwath was dealing with injury all throughout the season, but he's good to go. True 7-footer that's shooting 44% from 3, 8.5 points, 4 boards, block and a half for contest, and then Miles Bird has also been able to give you a block, 4.5 boards, 10.5 points per game, so great versatility there with San Diego State, willing to lay up to 5.5 with them, 6.5 or more, taking those points with Colorado State, and then 139.5 or less in on the over, 140.5 or higher, the under, 767, 768 on the card. This sounds like an insert because it is. I was not expecting San Jose State to win, but they're taking on New Mexico right now. We've got no numbers up on this game, but I've got my handicap. I said New Mexico is a 17.5 point favorite. We're going to lay up to 17 with them. 18 or more taking the points with San Jose State. 148 or less in on the over. 149 or higher the under. It's a San Jose State team that has absolutely nothing down low outside the top 3 with their own 2-point shooting percentage and opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. The one good thing that they do have, Kobe Garland. Kobe Garland has been able to do a good job in the backcourt for this team. He supplies you with over 20 points, 4.5 assists per game, has been shooting about 38.5% from 3-point range, and it's a San Jose State team that honestly has been respectable with their 3-point shooting. It's a team that overall is shooting 35.2% from 3 entering into yesterday. That does dip to about 33.1% away from home, and you've got a New Mexico team that they've been able to do a solid job with regards to their offense as well. Games played away from home, they shoot 36.7% from 3-point range. That's a top 55 mark in the country, and it's a New Mexico team that has been good in terms of generating turnovers. They are 44th in the country in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, and to the credit of San Jose State, they've been a top 125 team in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis on defense. The problem with this team just all comes down to their low post play. As for San Jose State, 359th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They're a bottom 10 team with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. They are getting absolutely bludgeoned on the glass. They are 346th with regards to rebound percentage. As Yafat Mundi, their top rebounder, went down very early on. Sadriq Nananana has had to step up. He's been able to give you about 5 rebounds per game, but inside of Adrian Myers, who's able to give you 10.5 points, right around about 4 or so rebounds per game. He just don't have much air, and it's not like New Mexico is like the monsters of the Midway down low, but they're a top 125 team with regards to their own rebound percentage. Jake Hall has been one of the most underrated players in all of college basketball, in my opinion. He's been shooting nearly 44% from 3-point range, splashes in there about 16 points per game, and then Tomislav Buzin, 12 points, right around about 10.3 rebounds per game. He's rock solid, and it is a New Mexico team where their kryptonite is down low. They're outside the top 235 with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. They're a top 20 team in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, so they do a nice job in terms of cutting out the faucet there for New Mexico. They're a top 125 team in terms of taking care of the ball as well, so they should be able to attack a lot of the weaknesses that San Jose State has. You've been able to have Dayton Albury be able to come on, give you about 10.5 points per contest for New Mexico. They are a top 100 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, and this should be a little bit of a lower tempo game. Now, New Mexico, they're a moderately up-tempo team. They're clocking in terms of total possessions per game right around about 114th in all of college basketball. San Jose State super slow, 327, so 148 or less in on the over, 149 or higher the under. With New Mexico, we'll lay up to 17 with them, 18 or more taking the points with San Jose State. 769, 770 on the card. It's Louisiana Tech and Middle Tennessee doing battle out there in Alabama for the Conference USA tournament, and right now with Middle Tennessee, 1.5 point favorites. Totals between 130.5 to 131.5. Do like the under, semi-total at a 130.5, and I actually like Louisiana Tech on the money line. Now, Louisiana Tech is a bottom 5 team in the country with regards to their 3-point shooting defense, and you've got a Middle Tennessee team that has been able to do a relatively okay job on defense. They're about 194th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They're middle of the road in terms of so many different things. They're like 154th with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. With their own 2-point shooting percentage, they're about country average there as well. Middle Tennessee shoots about 33.7% from 3. That's 194th in the country, but for Louisiana Tech, I think the fact that they grab so many second and third chances, about 34% of their missed shots in their roadside court games become an offensive rebound. That's a top 25 mark in the country. That's going to be able to win out here, even though they've got that awful 3-point shooting percentage. You've got DJ Dudley, who does shoot 39% from 3, 14 points per game. Now, you do have to be mindful that this team is awful at the free throw line. Louisiana Tech shoots 65.9% at the free throw line. They're a super slow team. They're in 16th in terms of total possessions per game. They're also outside the top 275 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, but also being a top 55 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis away from home should be able to keep them active and lively in this game. They're also a top 15 team with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. While they turn the ball over to Louisiana Tech outside the top 3 in terms of ball security, they've also been a top 100 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, with A.J. Bates giving you 11 points, 6 assists. He throws in their steal per contest, and then Caden Cooper has been able to give you about 1.6 steals per contest as well. Meanwhile, you've got a Middle Tennessee group that is headlined by Kamari Lance, 13.5 points, 2.5 assists per contest. He shoots about 33% from 3-point. Troy Olsen down low has been able to give you a little bit over a block per game, and it is a Middle Tennessee team that has been able to do a pretty solid job on the glass. They're a top 200 team with regards to their overall rebound percentage. In a pressure spot, they only shoot about 70.5% the free throw line, better than Louisiana Tech, but they're still outside the top 225 with that regard. And this is a Middle Tennessee team that they themselves are a bunch that has just been very neither here nor there in terms of being able to take care of the ball as well. They're outside the top 185 with regards to turnovers on a per possession basis. Al Oglesby has been able to shoot about 41% from 3, but I do think the way that Louisiana Tech should be able to manhandle things on the glass, and the way that Louisiana Tech does generate turnovers themselves, it makes this a slog of a game that they are able to get the job done in. So set Louisiana Tech as a 1.5 point favorite, like them on the money line, and you're at a 131 or higher. I do like the under 771, 772. You've got Kennesaw State. We give our to Lane Kiffin go Owls, and they're going to be playing against Western Kentucky. Western Kentucky 1 to 1.5 point favorites. 157 to 158 is the total line. I said Kennesaw State as a 1.5 point favorite. I do like them on the money line. Kennesaw State is doing a great job in terms of giving themselves second and third chances. Top 30 team with regards to offensive rebound percentage. Neither here nor there with their defense. 158th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Western Kentucky is 118th. Western Kentucky's big weakness is down low. They're outside the top 335 with regards to their 2-point shooting percentage. Both teams are looking to push some tempo, as right now for Western Kentucky, 47th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Kennesaw is 17th, and for Kennesaw, they do shoot overall 33.7% for 3 points. That dips at 31% away from home. Meanwhile, for Western Kentucky, they shoot about 30.2% from 3 points away from home, but the free throws are going to be big, as Kennesaw State will put you on the free throw line, and it's a Western Kentucky team that is a top 80 team with regards to their free throw shooting percentage. Meanwhile, for Kennesaw, they're a top 10 team in the country in terms of free throw attempts on a per game basis as well, and they've had, ever since Simeon Cottle was caught up in the FBI probe, R.G. Johnson really take ownership of the offense. Shoots 44% for 3, 14 points, right around about 4 assists per game. Franquan Sherman has been your main rebounder with about 10 points, 8.5 rebounds per game. Brandon Skip-to-My-Lou, 11.5 points, 5.5 rebounds per game. So weapons upon weapons against a Western Kentucky team that traditionally has been really good on the glass. This year they're outside the top 100 with regards to their overall rebound percentage. And even though Western Kentucky has been so bad in terms of executing on the inside, they're still a top 225 team in terms of points per possession because they take great care of the ball. This team is 31st in the country in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis and games played away from home. That does go inside the top 30. And for Kennesaw State, even with all the ailments, they have been a top 125 team in terms of their ball security in games played away from home as well, so should be able to get a lot of clean possessions. Either team necessarily pushes the issue in terms of generating turnovers. Tegan Moore was dealing with an injury for Western Kentucky, and he does give you more, right around about 18.5 points. Does shoot 42.5% for 3. Ryan Myers is a 40% 3-point shooter with about 11 points per game, and then you've been able to get about 6 boards per game out of Armello Boone. He's had a step up with the Brian Salbungwe injury, and then you've had Terry Madu be in and out of the lineup, but he's your main point guard with about 4.5 assists, 2 steals per contest. Him coming back does help out Western Kentucky, but in the end, I do think that the way that Kennesaw State grabs those second and third chances and the way that Western Kentucky does not finish down low allows Kennesaw to be able to get the job done. Like Kennesaw State on the money line, made them the 1.5 point favorite, and at a 158.5 that I'm seeing, like the over, semi-total 161.5, 773, 774. This is the American Conference Tournament as Tulane and Charlotte do battle. Right now, Charlotte is a 1.5 point favorite with a total of 145.5, semi-total of 140. I like the under, and I like Tulane here on the money line. I did set them as a 2-point favorite. Now, it's a Charlotte team has been a pretty solid 3-point shooting team. Charlotte, right now, they are shooting about 35% for 3 points. That dips at 32.1% away from home, and Tulane has actually been a more efficient offense away from home rather than at home. Overall, going into yesterday, they were about 261st in the country in terms of points per possession overall, back in the top 200 away from home, and away from home, they shoot 35.3% for 3 points compared to at home 30.2%. Now, Charlotte has been rough on the defensive glass, outside the top 225 in terms of defensive rebound percentage. Tulane's not grabbing second and third chances. They are well outside the top 330 with regards to offensive rebound percentage. And for Tulane, this is a group that has been neither here nor there in terms of generating turnovers. They're about country average with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. They are outside the top 200 with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, but you do have Rome Brumba, who's been able to do an incredible job supplying the team with about 18.5 points, 5 boards, 3.5 assists, shoots in the mid-30s from 3. Curtis Williams has been able to give you about 12.5 points. He shoots in the mid-30s from 3-point range as well. And for Tulane, the strength of this team has been getting to the free throw line. They do shoot about 75.8% of the free throw line. They're a top top 45 team in terms of free throw attempts on a per possession basis. Meanwhile, you've got a Charlotte team that they're going to put you at the free throw line. They're outside the top 250 in terms of free throw attempts allowed on a per possession basis. For Charlotte, they're a team that's been turning the ball over quite a bit as well. They're outside the top 245 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis, and they do not force the issue. They are outside the top 340 in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. Top 100 team with their 2-point shooting percentage, with Ben Bradford leading the way with about 13 points per game. And then Dizzy Mingo has been sort of the quarterback of the offense, 12.5 points, 4.5 assists. He shoots 37% from three. And then the ancillary guys in Dumani Harrison along with Aiden Coyers, these two guys, they combine for about 17.5 points per game and combine to shoot about 38% from three. But in a pressure spot, Charlotte only shoots about 71.5% at the free throw line, with them being well outside the top 225 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. I do think that Tulane gets the job done, but I do think that it's going to be an under because it's going to be a relatively slow tempo game. Tulane is very mid-tempo, 181st in terms of total possessions per game. Charlotte, they are 330th. So like the under, so I total 140, and I like Tulane here on the money line. 775, 776. Florida Atlantic is going to be playing against North Texas. No numbers currently up on this game, but I've got my handicap as I set Florida Atlantic as a 1.5 point favorite, so one to lay up to one with them, two or more. Take the points with North Texas. Set a total of a 135.5. So 135 or less in on the over, 136 or higher the under. Going to have a little bit of a tempo war here as Florida Atlantic, about 64th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, and North Texas is not that. They're back to playing very slow and controlled, 280th in terms of total possessions per game. North Texas has been a really good defense this year, 33rd in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis in games played away from home. This actually ascends into the top 12 in the country. They're top 15 team in games played away from home in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage and turnovers generated on a per possession basis. They do give up second and third chances, though. They are about 264th in the country in terms of defense rebound percentage and games played away from home. They allow teams to grab 33.7% of their misses as an offensive rebound. Meanwhile, Florida Atlantic, they're a top 80 team with regards to their defensive rebound percentage, and for Florida Atlantic, they have been dealing with the injury to their top scorer, Devin Vanderpool. He was out yesterday, so if he does play in this game, he's going to be incredibly limited, but Cannon Carlisle's right now supplying you with about 14.5 points, 3 assists. He shoots in the mid-30s from three-point range. Isaiah Elam has been able to give you about 12 points. He shoots in the mid-30s from three-point range. Florida Atlantic has been outside the top 200 with regards to their three-point shooting percentage and opponents' three-point shooting percentage, but are excelling on the inside. Top 90 team with regards to opponents' two-point shooting percentage. Their own two-point shooting percentage is in the top 120, and for Florida Atlantic, with the way that they've been a top 100 team with regards to offensive rebound percentage, I think that wins out here against the North Texas team that just has not been able to execute on offense away from home. They are outside the top 320 in terms of points per possession away from home. They shoot 25.6% from three-point range in a road/neutral court environment. Depending upon the day that you look, they're either last or second to last in all of college basketball, so that has been all sorts of awful for this team. Now, I do have a guy that has been able to give you darn near 17 points per game and has been able to take ownership of the offense ever since the Will McClendon injury, and Jashawn Stevenson, he throws in there about 2 assists per game. He only shoots about 31% from three, and then David Terrell, 5 assists, 13.5 points per game, but he shoots about 27% from the outside. It's a North Texas team that does a great job defensively. They just don't do anything on offense. I do think they get some late fouls, and this is also a North Texas team that they only shoot about 69.5% in the free throw line. So with Florida Atlantic, we'll lay up to a point with them, so I shake them as a money line underdog. 2 or more, take the points with North Texas, 135 or less, like the over, 136 or higher, the under. And then we go to the WAC tournament out here in lovely Las Vegas, 777, 778. Ben Wilson will be on the call for this game. Southern Utah is doing battle with UT Arlington, and Arlington finds themselves as a mid-tier favorite here, as you're going to be laying with them 5.5 points total on this game, 140.5 to 141.5. Did set a total of a 143.5. I do like the over. I know that Ben was talking about this with Southern Utah being really the most up-tempo team in the conference, 73rd in the country in terms of total possessions per game, and UT Arlington, they're just amazing in terms of guarding the three-point arc. Numero uno teams are shooting 27% from three-point range against them. It's a Southern Utah team that's been neither here nor there with their three-point shooting percentage at 33.7%, shoot 36.4% from three at home, 32% away from home, and Arlington is not a team that really lights it up from three. They shoot 29.4% from three. That is 347th in all of college basketball, and it has been a team that's been well outside the top 225 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, but they have an edge on the offensive glass, 47th in the country in terms of percentage of their missed shots that become an offensive rebound. Southern Utah is only 240th, and Southern Utah has been just getting absolutely lambasted on the glass right now. In terms of defensive rebound percentage, they are 305th, 31.5% of opponents' missed shots become an offensive rebound, and even though Arlington has been rough with regards to that overall shooting, and Arlington, they themselves turn the ball over quite a bit. They're outside the top 325 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis on offense. Southern Utah's outside the top 300 as well, but I do like UT Arlington in this spot because they do have just that big edge on the glass. You've been able to have Marcel McCreary step up in the backcourt, give you about 12.5 points, shoots 33% from three, which that's like the only guy in the roster that's shooting about 31% from three, but also shoots about 84.9% the free throw line. UT Arlington shoots about 71.8% the free throw line. Not amazing, but not absolutely terrible. You've had Rayshawn Semester give you 12.6 half rebounds per game, and then Cameron Jackson doesn't really give you a lot of scoring with 4.3 points, but throws in there about 4.2 boards per contest. And then Jaden Faroa for the Southern Utah team has been able to do a little bit of everything for them as he throws in there in that neighborhood about 13.5 points, 6.5 boards from three-point range, just shot over 42% from three, block and a half at a steal per contest. Elijah Duvall is your top scorer with 15 points. He shoots in the mid-30s from three, and then Tanner Hayhurst has been able to shoot 47% from three-point range, and he and Faroa both shoot above 86% the free throw line. Overall, it's a Southern Utah team that does shoot 72% at the free throw line, but they're outside the top 175 with their own two-point shooting percentage. Again, they're just getting absolutely lambasted from three-point range. They're outside the top 335 towards opponents' three-point shooting percentage. Now, they do force teams inside, and they're not the world's worst two-point shooting percentage defense, but again, they're not amazing. They're a top 25 team in terms of percentage of opponents' field goal attempts that do come from two-point range, and right now they rank about 206th with regards to opponents' two-point shooting percentage. Meanwhile, it's an Arlington team that's been far better with this regard. Arlington 120th in all of college basketball, so do think that Arlington going to be able to control this game, and I do think that's going to be quick enough, and you're going to get late fouls for the over. So, like these total over, I set my total 143.5, and want to lay up to 7 here with UT Arlington, 779, 780. You've got Utah Tech, and they're going to be playing against Abilene Christian. Abilene Christian is a underdog here of 3.5 points, 142.5 is the total. I do like the under. I set my total at a 138.5. Abilene Christian team that just has not been playing up tempo whatsoever with Abilene Christian in terms of total possessions per game. They check in right around about 169th in the country. Meanwhile, you've got a Utah Tech team that they're neither here nor there with their tempo as well. 143rd in terms of total possessions per game. Both of these teams have had some issues being able to put points upon the board, and Utah Tech is getting blasted on the glass. They are allowing teams to grab 32.7% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound. Abilene Christian doesn't grab a lot of second and third chances, but they disallow second and third chances as well. In games played away from home, teams are only grabbing about 24.9% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound. That's actually a top 40 mark in the country. Now, where Utah Tech has really been able to shine is with their three-point shooting defense. They are a top 15 team, allowing teams to shoot less than 30.5% from three-point range. And for Utah Tech, they do have Ethan Potter down low, who's been solid, 16 points, 8 boards, and you've got a guy in Chance Trujillo who's been able to give you some nice production with about 12.5 points per game. Their main three-point shooter is Sean Holt, who's been shooting 41% from three, 12 points per game, but team as a whole, they shoot about 34.5% from three. That's country average. They have been a top 125 team with their two-point shooting percentage, and Abilene Christian, they're a top 15 team in the country in terms of percentage of field goal attempts that come from inside the three-point line. Abilene Christian is also a top 50 team with regards to free throw attempts allowed on a per possession basis, and it is a Utah Tech team that's neither here nor there. They shoot about 72.5% at the free throw line, but where Abilene Christian shines is the ability to generate turnovers. They are a top 5 team in the country in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, and Utah Tech has had a tough time taking care of the ball, and really both of these teams have had a tough time taking care of the ball. Abilene Christian, while they generate so many turnovers, they're 355th in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis on offense. Utah Tech, they're about 233rd, but for this Abilene Christian team, I do think that Braden Hubbard is going to be able to keep them lively. 16 points, shoots about 32% from three. Abilene Christian as a whole, they're only shooting about 31.5% from the outside. They've also been outside the top 300 with regards to their two-point shooting percentage as well, so offense has been a little bit lackadaisical, but I do think that with the way that they just generate turnovers, the way that they make life miserable in general, with the way that they just pressure you, I do think that that's going to cause for a lot of dead possessions and keep them lively. So set my line at 2.5. I'm going to take the points with Abilene Christian, and I'm going to be in on the under. Set my total 138.5, 781, 782 out here in Henderson, Nevada. It's UC San Diego. They're going to be taking on Cal State Northridge. As of right now, we're seeing an opener of San Diego being a 3.5 to a 4-point favorite. That total is 155.5, and I said a total of 156.5. I do like the over, mainly because CSUN just plays so up-tempo in terms of total possessions per game, second in the country, so they're going to look to absolutely gun it in. CSUN has been a great team on the defensive glass. Their line teams grab only 24% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound. That is 26th in all of college basketball. San Diego's not bad here either, though. They're 53rd in the country in terms of percentage of missed shots that become an offensive rebound for opponents. For San Diego, they've been also shooting about 31.5% from three-point range at home. That goes up to 34.7% away from home. You've had had Leo Beth be the main scorer for this team, 12.5 points, 5 rebounds per game. He shoots about 35.5% from three-point range. Alex Cholkin has been able to give you about 41% three-point shooting. He supplies the team with about 10 points per contest, and then Boldengo has been able to give you 11 points per game. You do have a problem with free throw shooting on both sides. For San Diego, they shoot 69% of the free throw line. That's about 290th in all of college basketball, and CSUN is even worse. This CSUN team is right now shooting at the free throw line a nice hearty 66.5%. That is a bottom 20 mark in the country, but you do have the top scorer in this game, Larry Hughes Jr., 17.5 points. He shoots 40% from three-point. Josh O'Gara is able to give you 9 boards, 14.5 points per game. It's a CSUN team that's been outside the top 290 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis, but San Diego, unlike last year, they're not generating a ton of turnovers, but are in 60th in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, and it's a UC San Diego team that has been really looking to make it their bones down low. Top 100 team in terms of both their own two-point shooting percentage and opponents' two-point shooting percentage. Meanwhile, for CSUN, you've been able to get a lot out of Mohamed Fofana, who's been able to give you about 12 points, 8 rebounds per game. It's a team with a clear advantage on the glass, but I just don't trust this Northridge team in terms of being able to hit their free throws to be able to win this game outright. But at the same time, with San Diego, they shoot it so badly at the free throw line. I do think that Northridge's ability to be able to just hit the boards, and they themselves have been a top 135 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, is enough for them to hold lively. So I did set my line at 2.5. At 3+, I'm going to be willing to take the points with Northridge, and I do like this total over. I think that this is close enough for late fellow, set my total at a 156.5, and then this is the last game on the normalized Vegas betting board before we hit the extra games. 783, 784 on the card. Do I have to do this before I know the exact final of UC Davis versus Santa Barbara? But right now, looking like UC Davis should be facing off against Cal State Fullerton, and my handicap is UC Davis being a 2-point favorite. I'd be willing to lay up to 1.5 with them, 2.5 or more. Take the points with Fullerton, and then set a total to where a 159.5 or less. I'm in on the over, 160.5 or higher, the under, and in the outside chance that we do have Santa Barbara make a comeback and be able to get the job done with this total, we'll be setting it to more like a 157.5 or less to the over, 158.5 or higher to the under. And with Santa Barbara, I'd be setting them as closer to about a 4-point favorite, subject to a little bit of change there as I prepared a little bit more for UC Davis, as UC Davis has been a very good team in terms of generating turnovers, as this bunch has been a team that's had a tough time taking care of the ball themselves, 278th in the country in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis on offense, but that does improve to the top 240 when they're away from home. Meanwhile, it's a Fullerton team that has been able to do a great job on both fronts with regards to turnovers. 68th in the country in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis on offense. On defense, they are 39th in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. UC Davis, though, they're even better. 27th in the country in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis overall. That goes into the top 20 when they're away from home. And this is a Fullerton team that has had quite a few issues with regards to their interior play. They've been a good outside shooting team. They shoot 34.9% from three-point range away from home. That is a top 125 mark in the country, while UC Davis, they shoot about 34.9% overall. That does fall off to 32.9% away from home. But for UC Davis, you do have Nico Dokac down low, has been able to do a nice job giving you about 5.5 rebounds per game. And I do like the trio of Marcus Wilson, Niles Cooper, along Connor Sevilla. These three guys have been able to combine for about 39 points per game. Sevilla has been your main three-point shooter at 44%, shoots 70% at the free throw line. And then Carl Daughtry has been able to be a 40% three-point shooter with 9.5 points per game. Dealt with a little bit of ailment, and he had himself a big game against Santa Barbara on Wednesday. And for this UC Davis team, they've been a team that's been just a hair outside the top 200 with regards to opponents' two-point shooting percentage, but they're good at getting the free throw line, and they do shoot 75% at the free throw line, so that's working in their advantage. And it's a Fullerton team that just doesn't give themselves second and third chances. Really, neither of these teams do. Davis is outside the top 285 with regards to offensive rebound percentage. Fullerton is well outside the top 300, and for Fullerton, they're getting blasted on the inside. They are well outside the top 300 with regards to opponents' two-point shooting percentage. Now, they're inside the top 125 with their own two-point shooting percentage, and they have been absolutely gunning at this season. UC Davis is up-tempo as well, 67th in terms of total possessions per game. Fullerton is 6th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, so they're absolutely looking to grip it and rip it. And for this Fullerton team, I would say a pretty solid offense. They're right now 201st in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Josh Ward and Jefferson De La Cruz Menegro have led the backcourt, as for De La Cruz Menegro, 12 points per contest, only shoots 30% from three. Landon Seaman has been that top three-point shooter with about 38% three-point shooting, 12 points per game, and then you get a little bit of everything out of Ward, 14.5 points, 4.5 boards, 3.5 assists, shoots about 32% from three, and then Christian Williams has been able to come on, shoot about 37% from three. And for this Fullerton team, you don't have a single guy in the roster, despite how up-tempo they play. They give you over 4.8 rebounds per game. They've also been pretty solid on the defensive glass. They're not allowing a lot of second and third chances, and that's been a little bit of an issue for the Davis team. UC Davis is well outside the top 125 with regards to defensive rebound percentage. This Fullerton team does find themselves in the top 175 with that regard, but it is a Fullerton team that if you need them to be able to cover at the free throw line, they shoot just 71% at the charity stripe. UC Davis are a little bit better there, and Davis Texas is a bit better at getting to the free throw line as well. So circumstance where I made UC Davis a 2-point favorite, 1 to lay up to 1.5 with them, 2.5 or more. Take the points with Fullerton, and then 159 or for less, and on the over 160 or higher the under. And like I said, with Santa Barbara, they'd be more like a 4-point favorite with a total closer to about 158 in that circumstance. And now we hit the extra games.
The normal betting board picks are complete, but there are some extra games today, so we go into the bonus.
306-511, 306-512. Alabama A&M is going to be playing against Texas Southern. This is from Atlanta, Georgia, and Alabama A&M is a 1 to 1.5 point favorite. 142.5 to 144.5 is the total, and I feel like the wrong team is favored here. I did set Texas Southern as a 1-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to take a shot on them on the money line. Now for Texas Southern, this has been a less than tremendous year. They're outside the top 275 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Offense has gone going a little bit more. They're still about 279th in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Alabama A&M hasn't been able to get a lot going on offense either, though. They're about 230th in terms of points per possession, but they do see a drop-off of about 10.4 points fewer per 100 possessions when they're away from home rather than at home, and this is pretty much their Grambling style with Alabama A&M. They brought in the Grambling coach in Dante Jackson, and he brought with him a lot of the key guys from a season ago. Contavious Dozier, who's been sort of tied for that top scoring role with Coron Davis. Both give you 14.9 points per game, with Alabama A&M just not shooting well on the inside. They're outside the top 3 with their 2-point shooting percentage, now shooting about 34.5% from 3-point range. That's country average. You've had James Graham be able to give you 36% 3-point shooting, about 10 points per game. PJ Eason is shipping in there about 7 rebounds per game, but Troy Hupseed is going to be the best overall rebounder in this game for Texas Southern. He's come in, give the team 14.5 points, 9.5 rebounds per game. For Texas Southern, they have been a top 225 team with regards to their own rebound percentage. They are a team that is about 230th with opponent's 2-point shooting percentage. They've been a country average team with regards to guarding the 3-point line as well, so they've been able to do a better job there. Their main kryptonite has been turnovers. They are currently well outside the top 3 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis on the offensive side of things, and defensively, you've got a lot of teams that do a nice job in terms of generating turnovers in this flag. Texas Southern, not necessarily one of those teams, as right now, they're about 189th in the country in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. Alabama A&M isn't either, though. They're about 175th in the country, and for Texas Southern, they dealt with injury all throughout the season. Alex Anderson, Bryce Roberts were a pair of guys that missed multiple games towards the non-conference portion of the season. They've come back to be able to give you combined 21 points per game. Zaire Hayes is now shooting 37.5% from 3-point range, and if you look at conference play and conference play only, Texas Southern within the conference was 3rd in the conference with regards to their own 3-point shooting percentage. They were a top 5 team with regards to their overall rebound percentage. Did a nice job cutting down on the turnovers in a pressure spot. This is a bunch of, they do shoot about 71.5% at the free throw line. Alabama A&M, if they're put to the free throw line, they're shooting more around about 74.5% at the free throw line, but I do think that Texas Southern being able to figure out the turnover issues in conference is going to be just enough to be able to get the job done here, so I do like Texas Southern on the money line. I did set a total of a 147, as you've got an Alabama A&M team that is a little bit slower, 262nd in terms of total possessions per game. Texas Southern, 56th in terms of total possessions per game, so like the over and Texas Southern on the money line. 306-513, 306-514, Arkansas Pine Bluff, they are going to be playing against Southern, and Southern does find themselves as a bit of a favorite here, as you're going to be laying with them 4.5 points. Totals between 152.5 to 154.5, and made a total of a 153. So mostly seeing 154 plus. I'm going to be in on the under. Now you do have a Pine Bluff team that's certainly looking to push tempo, 57th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Southern not a team that is shy to run either, as they're currently 26th in terms of total possessions per game. Southern once again a pretty solid team in terms of generating turnovers. They are about 56th in the country in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. Pine Bluff more of a country average team, right around 185th, and Pine Bluff has had a tough time taking care of the ball. They are outside the top 3 with regards to turnovers on a per possession basis on offense, but it is a team that has been able to get quite a bit going from 3-point range. Top 200 team shooting 34% from 3. They've got 2 headline guys, Keon Williams along Jaquan Scott. Scott, 16.7 boards, only shoots about 31% from 3, and then Williams, he just stuffs the stat sheet, steal and a half, 17.5 points, 5.5 assists, 8 rebounds per game, and then you've had Trevon Payton be a nice off-the-ball scorer. He's been shooting over 46% from 3-point range, supplying the team with about 10 points per game, and then for Southern, Michael Jacobs has been the top scorer for the team throughout the entirety of the season. He's taken a little bit of a drop-off with regards to scoring here in conference play, but the guys down low have really been able to step up. Malik Agewald, 11.6 half rebounds per game. Damari Jones has been able to give you about 10 points, 6 half rebounds per game. Now, do want to be noting that Jones was dealing with a little bit of ailment towards the back half of the season, but I'm thinking that he should be able to go in this game. Additionally, you've been able to get some pretty good production out of Cam Broy. He missed a little bit of time during the season, but he's been shooting 36% from 3, 9.5 points per game for a Southern team that has been been a top 250 team with regards to both opponents' 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage. They excel at getting to the free throw line, though they only shoot 70% of the free throw line, and they themselves will put you at the free throw line. For Southern, they're a top 40 team in terms of free throw attempts allowed on a per possession basis, and it is a Pine Bluff team that at the charity stripe, they do shoot about 75.5%, top 75 mark in the country, but I do think that the overall turnovers are going to cost you the over. I do think that Pine Bluff holds in there, but in the end, I think that Southern does just enough to be able to cover this one. So I'm at a line of 5, so I'm willing to lay the 4.5 here with Southern, and I do like the 154 plus to the under. 306.515, 306.516. You've got South Carolina State. They're going to be playing against Norfolk State from Scope Arena. That is out there in Norfolk, Virginia. And right now, Norfolk State, 6.5 to 7.5 point favorites. 144 to 145.5 is the total line. With South Carolina State, set them as an underdog of 9.5 points. Going to be willing to lay with Norfolk State. Norfolk State is in their home city for one, so that helps out a little bit. And South Carolina State just really isn't doing a whole heck of a lot right in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. This is a unit that find themselves 354th in all of college basketball, and the defense has been a little bit better because they generate some turnovers, 74th in the country. There's a turnovers generated on a per possession basis, but if they don't generate a turnover, they do allow a lot of open looks. They're well outside the top 250 in terms of opponents' 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage. Overall, 329th in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Have a Norfolk State team that has been a relatively respectable defensive team, 157th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Now, they do shoot just 67.3% of the free throw line. They're not necessarily excelling on offense as well. 285th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. And the one good thing that you got for South Carolina State is that your main two guys have been able to shoot it relatively well from 3-point range. Jaden Johnson, 13 points, shoots 35% from 3. Owen Bronson Jr. shoots 36% from 3. He supplies you with about 10.5 points per game, but Bronson dealt with injury throughout the back half of the season. Was able to return in the most recent game against NC Central, so should be good to go here, but don't have a lot down low. You've got Cameron Clark along Christopher Parker, who both give you about 5.1 rebounds per game, and while Norfolk State does not have a single guy in the roster that really gives you over 5 rebounds per game, you've got a really good team by committee in terms of being able to grab boards, as this Norfolk State team is a top 135 team with regards to rebound percentage, and you have two main headline scorers. Anthony Bacoma, who's been able to give you 17 points. He shoots about 38.5% from 3, 4.5 boards per contest. Elijah Jamison, 14.5 points, 3 assists. He only shoots about 29.5% from 3. And then your number 3 guy, Devin Ellis, he's now shooting 39.5% from 3, 11.5 points, throws in there about 4.5 rebounds per game, and with this Norfolk State team being one that has been able to do a nice job in terms of getting to the free throw line, even though they don't necessarily can a lot of free throws, and they're a top 75 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. South Carolina State well outside the top 325 in terms of taking care of the ball. Do think that Norfolk State takes care of business here. Set my line at 9.5. Want to lay with Norfolk State. Made my total a 145.5, so on the 144, 144.5, like the over, and then we wrap things up with 306.517, 306.518. NC Central is going to be playing against Maryland Eastern Shore. This Shore is a 1.5 point underdog. 132 to 133.5 is the total, and I said NC Central is a 5-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. It is an NC Central team that ranks 34th in the country in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. Meanwhile, you do have a Maryland Eastern Shore team that's in the top 125 with this regard, but they're a top 20 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis at home. That falls outside the top 175 away from home. Both of these teams have had plenty of issues taking care of the ball, especially Maryland Eastern Shore. They are turning the ball over on 23.9% of their possessions away from home. That is dead sinking last in the country. And then for NC Central, have the top scorer in this game, Gage Lattimore, 17 points, 4 boards, and shoots 39% from 3-point. Corey Carvey has been a nice scorer as well with about 13.5 points per game, but I'm expecting him out for this game. He's been out the last month or so. Jay Slack has been able to pick up the slack recently, though, as he bombs it at about 36% from 3, 8.5 points per game. Now, it is an NC Central team that is outside the top 250 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis because, for lack of a better term, they gamble for turnovers. They're outside the top 300 with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, outside the top 285 with both their own 2-point shooting percentage and opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, and they are getting land-based on the glass. Maryland Eastern Shore, they're just outside the top 225 with regards to overall rebound percentage. NC Central, they are well outside the top 350 with this regard, but it's not like Maryland Eastern Shore is like dominating on the boards. You have Zion Oblana, who's been able to give you 10.5 points, 5.8 rebounds per game. Lone guy in the roster that gives you over 3.8 rebounds per game, Jaden Cooper and Joseph Luxardo, they combine for about 17.5 points, and Luke Hardo, he's able to shoot about 40% from 3-point range. It's a Maryland Eastern Shore team that, as a whole, they only shoot about 30.1% from 3 outside the top 325 in all of college basketball. They've been outside the top 235 with their own 2-point shooting percentage. Bottom 10 team in terms of free throw attempts on a per game basis, and all the sloppy turnovers I think are going to be very costly in this game. So with NC Central, I did set them as a 5-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. Think that this comes down to late fouls, even though Maryland Eastern Shore, well outside the top 320 in terms of total possessions per game, won't take the overs. Did set my total at a 133, and that'll wrap things up for the Thursday edition of Cuffs to Cuffs Soups, now part of the VSiN family podcast. Big thanks to Ben Wilson. He does great work work here at VSiN. He joined me in the last segment. If you do like hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you do have one or two ways to be able to fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at @GUnit_81. Keep in mind, Lars EM, maybe does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. The other way is via an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review, coming at you guys every single day throughout the college basketball season with picks and analysis on every game every day. So I'll be back with you once again tomorrow. Thank you.